Bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back.
Let's see if we got audio. Now we got audio. From the The Groove Remains production team studios in the Netherlands. My name is Mixmaster G and welcome to this live stream. My mission is not to sell you as many apps as I can. No, my mission is to educate and teach you about collection management and conversion for DJs. So you save yourself more time for the fun and creative part of being a DJ. Tonight we have a special night because later on we are joined by a techno legend, namely Chris Liebing, and I'm really honored that Chris is going to join the stream later on. But before Chris is going to join us, there is some stuff that we need to talk about, because there happened quite some things this week that I want to share with you guys in the world of DJ stuff. And not only in DJ stuff, but also in other stuff. First of all, the DJ Tech Tools already run an article about the fact that DJ supplies are going to be more and more expensive and in shorter supply this year. And let me pull that article up real quick so you can have a look at it. And there you see it. DJ prices going up slowly low. Here's why and what every DJ should know about it. It's a good article. I recommend you to read all about it. But there is something more in that, what is not in that article, that just happened recently, namely this. As most of you guys know, my background are the financial markets, so I always follow what is happening in there. And in China right now there is an energy crisis. If you think that the UK got an energy crisis, China it's much worse. And how does China solve their crises? Very simple, they just mandatory shut everything down. Because there is one thing they don't want, and that's uproar from the public. Which means that Chinese manufacturers are just shut down by the government and cannot produce the goods we want or even manufacture the stuff we need. Even big names like Apple and Tesla are right now affected by these measures, and it will get worse before it gets better. which also means that DJ supplies will be very, very slow. So keep that in mind when you want to order something for Christmas, because chances are that you are not going to get it at Christmas at all. The lead times right now that I hear in the channel are February next year at the earliest for the most popular things. So keep that in mind. Furthermore, I am joined by the mods who usually do the other streaming channels on Twitch to moderate the Twitch channel. Thank you very much, John P, DJ T Diesel, and DZ Smoke That Thing for that. My girlfriend Yvette is going to moderate the Facebook and YouTube chats, so just making sure that things are all in order. So that is all going to be. And if you just have a question for Chris, put the hashtag ask in the chat, and I'm happy to address it. Something else that also happened over this weekend that I want to share with you guys, because that is a little Mixmaster G thingy, which is really great for me. As a very young boy, I always was caught up by the books by Frank Herbert called Dune. And let me get on screen for those who are unfamiliar with Dune. Those are these books. You can buy them on Amazon. And I was just a little kid, like 11 or 12 years old, and those are 6 books, and I really ate those books. Then later on in 1984, there came a movie of those books, or actually the first book of it. And that movie was made by David Lynch and didn't have all the good receptions. You can see it has a 6.4 on the IMDb database. I really dig the movie because it's my kind of movie. It is not clean, it is dirty, it is filthy, and it is very good for the books. But now something very special happens, because in 2000 a very new version of the Dune movie came out, and that is beautiful made. That is so beautiful. If you have not seen it, I really recommend you to go and see it, because this movie is everything you want a movie to be. Yvette and I saw it in IMAX 3D, and I can just recommend it so very highly. For those of you who are in the Dune saga, it's the first half of the first book, so it's not even the complete book yet. It remains in question if there is going to be a succession to that, or if there is going to be a part 2. That depends on the financial success of this one. And that is why I want to promote it, because I so hope this is a success, because it's a gorgeous movie. If you're not into the story, then just watching it, it's beautifully made. So that was a little thing personal from me. And then the last thing I want to put your attention to is Dropbox and Rekordbox 6. Because as I spoke with you guys about last week, Pioneer DJ made Dropbox Unlimited available at the highest tier Dropbox or Rekordbox subscription. My friend Phil Morse from Digital DJ Tips run an article over it as well, and I share his opinion. So if you want to know something more about that, just read that article by Phil Morse. However, there is a thing I want to warn you guys about, and that is the following. Dropbox is not a mysterious cloud server which is disconnected from your computer. No, Dropbox is a folder on your computer that is synced with a cloud server, which means if you've got 2 terabytes of tracks in the cloud on Dropbox, you need at least 2 terabytes of space on the hard drive of your computer to store it. Otherwise, it's nice that it is in the cloud, but neither Rekordbox or anything else can access it. So whatever you do, keep in mind Dropbox is just a folder on your computer, which also means because this works really well. Rekordbox 6 with Dropbox, it works really well. Nothing bad I can say about that. But if you have computer A, and that is your main computer, the computer I'm on right now, and if I'm going to look at the hard drive size, let's see that I switch my screen again. There we are. Then I see that my startup drive now has left 1.3 terabyte. Which means if I've got a 3 terabyte Dropbox cloud drive and that is not already synced with this computer, it will not fit. And keep that in mind. So no matter how nice it is, it still has to fit your computer. And if not, then you are going to get troubles with it. So that's very important as well, just to keep in mind. Then another thing that happened is that the Amsterdam Dance Event finally published their first program draft, the first draft of their program. And let me pull that on screen as well for you guys, so we can share that together. The Amsterdam Dance Event is scaled down, as you might know, because right now, due to the COVID measures in the Netherlands, they weren't sure if the conferences could go ahead and if the workshops and masterclasses could go ahead. Turns out they can go ahead. But right now the whole program of the Amsterdam Dance Events is mainly the parties, and all the conference and networking part is taken away from it. That also means that all the usual product releases and new products that are introduced during the Amsterdam Dance Events will not be there, because basically there are only parties going on. Amsterdam Dance Event promised that they would give some kind of a networking event or a networking location, but that still hasn't materialized. So I'm not sure if and how that is going to happen and how successful that will be, because all the major players in the industry I spoke with, like the people from Pioneer, from Denon, from Native Instruments, they all told me that they won't have a real delegation at the Amsterdam Dance Event, simply because there is no reason, there is no networking, there are no conferences, there is no exhibition space, so why would they be there? Keep that in mind. Maybe that things will change and turn around. I was planning to do pop-up live streams during the Amsterdam Dance Event wherever possible, and maybe I will still do that. I will be in the city because Amsterdam is just 15-minute drive away from here, so it's very close by for me and I want to see what's going on. But chances are that it will not be as interesting from a gear software point, and that it will be more a party, ravers, DJ thing than anything else, which is not bad, but it's something different. This Thursday, by the way, at 5 o'clock, there will be a big event for the Amsterdam Dance Event, where they will speak, not now, come on, where they will speak about the program, the things you can expect there. So if you are interested in that kind of stuff, join the Amsterdam Dance Event Facebook page and join the event. It might be very interesting to see what's going to happen there. And talking about interesting, our guest of tonight, and that is Chris Liebing, of course, is going to join us in a moment. I'm not sure, I don't see Chris right there. Chris, are you ready to join the stream, my friend? Chris is ready to join the stream. So let me switch the cams that you can see him. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with your warmest and with your biggest one in the chat. Put all the ones in the chat. Here he is, techno legend, record label boss, radio host and producer, Chris Liebing, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, Peter and everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Chris. That's working fine. And look how beautiful those cams look like this. That we have similar size heads and stuff like that. Usually the people in the stream know that I use an overlay with turntables over us because, well, that's kind of my trademark. But Chris and I were just checking it out, and Chris cannot zoom his cam right now. He's on a fixed cam, making his head very big and mine very small. While I'm truly the big guy. I know Chris is not. He lives the healthy life. So we decided to drop the overlay and just do it like this, and I hope that will be fine. Chris, first of all, thank you very, very much for doing this. Sure.
No worries. I love that you mentioned the movie Dune. I'm so in love still with the original movie. Maybe it has holes in it and it got bad, like some movie critics didn't like it. But the atmosphere of this movie is so incredible. It's so good. And I have not watched the new one. Have you watched the new one yet?
Yes, yes. Yvette and I went in this weekend. We watched it in IMAX, and if you are going to watch it in IMAX 3D because it's a total immersive experience. It is much cleaner than the original. I love the David Lynch one. I really love that. I love the dirtiness of that. I love that Baron Harkonnen, that really was a creep, and that he was really like, ugh, I'm not going to eat for a week after I see that guy. And this Baron Harkonnen and his nephew are just clean, and not clean, but compared to what you are used from the David Lynch picture, this is a very clean picture, but it is so gorgeous. I don't know if you have seen...
Paul Atreides, right? Atreides.
Yeah, Paul Atreides. It's a good cast. He is convincing. Yeah. I didn't like Jessica. That is his mother. Jessica in the Dune series is a very strong woman, a very female strong woman. And this Jessica just cries too much. Oh. She snaps at and I don't like that. That's not the Jessica I know from the books, but those are just minor things. Each film producer is like a DJ. It's his interpretation of the story, of course. But this is such a great story, and I was kind of thinking, well, I think Chris is a Dune guy too, but Chris and I are of the same generation, we are of the same age, so I can only imagine that Chris did similar stuff I did as a little kid, which means eating all the science fiction books you can get your hands on, because that's what us geeks do. We read science fiction, right?
Yeah, remember kids, there was no internet. Well, but Peter, thank you for having me on. I'm really enjoying your products. Yeah, they were helping me incredibly. By the way, I want to say quickly hi. There, I see some people who were always in our DJs and Beers talks in the chat room already. And yeah, I mean, one time I was when I was transitioning, but we can dive in. But I'll let you lead But when I just want to let you know how I came across you actually. When I started to look into playing a little bit more with CDJs and using a little bit more Rekordbox, which I've never done before, and I'm still a pretty new person to all this, I came across your stream one time, and I watched it, and I was I think maybe you remember I commented one time I wanted to know something about the loops at the end and stuff like this.
Actually, I remember that, and that was the reason why I reached back to you, because the problem with me is I am really bad in faces, I'm really bad in names, so I can pass you by in the supermarket, but if I don't expect you there, I don't. But I know exactly what we discussed, because that was a stream where I had Jeroen Groenendijk of Pioneer DJ Netherlands on as a guest, and your question actually made me think about something that I'm going to show you later on. The question was about active loops in Rekordbox, loops that automatically activate when you enter Rekordbox, and I'm going to show you some stuff that I promised you that you are going to really like what you are going to see, and indeed you are going to love it. I'm pretty sure, but it is what I do, Chris. This whole DJ software and DJ teaching, collection conversions, I do it as a hobby. I wrote those tools for my own good, because I'm a Traktor user just like you. And I came to the conclusion, all right, if I want to go to Rekordbox, this won't fly, and I can. So that's where everything came from, and it's still a hobby. I still consider it a hobby, only it grew totally out of hand. I never expected it to be a success like this, and it was never my intention either, but I take it anyway. So that is the base where this comes from. But please tell us where you are joining us today from. Where in the world are you at the moment, Chris? Because you are a traveling DJ.
Let me add, I notice you're doing this with a lot of passion. Like this
sure.
This is so nice, and I think that's the basis of any music that we should be making. It should be about passion, that you're passionate about it. Yeah, I am in Switzerland right now. Last year in December, I actually moved to Switzerland. I'm in the middle of the mountains, and because of the pandemic, I was not really feeling the city anymore, Frankfurt. And I have a lot of friends here since I've been coming to this place for almost like 30 years now. And before I actually was a DJ, I was a skier. So this is my second passion. And so I spent the whole winter here. And one time I was sitting up on the mountain. I think some of the DJs and Beers viewers might remember that moment because I was mentioning it there as well. I was like looking around at the mountains and I was like, why would I ever leave here again? That's too good here. So I decided to stay. I still have my place in Frankfurt, so sometimes I go back and forth. This is where I did my Alone Together streams during the pandemic from. And yeah, so I built a little, let's say, home studio here in this little apartment that I have here. And yeah, it's been amazing. And it's another proof that you don't really need fancy studio surroundings. You don't really need much stuff even. If you want to do music, you know, I mean, even a laptop is already enough if you want to do music. And everything else is bonus.
We already did that discussion this afternoon with Phil Morris of Digital DJ Tips. He had a subject about 5 reasons why you don't need new gear right now.
Yes.
And I was totally agreeing with him because it really doesn't matter what gear you are using as long as you can blend 2 sounds together and you have some control over it. You are fine as a DJ. And of course, all the latest, greatest is great to have. I am that person too. But strictly necessary? No. Why? It will always fly. For those of you unfamiliar with the things that Chris just mentioned, Chris is no stranger to live streaming at all. He did the Alone Together DJ live sets, and I think you are still doing those, right, Chris? That was not only...
Yeah, the last one I did, I think, 20th of August. You can still find those on my YouTube channel. And since then, I have to admit, DJ gigs have been getting back to almost normal again. So I've been a lot on the road again in the past 4, 5, 6 weeks. Yeah, so there's less time to take care of the DJ streams. But one thing I wanted to add is, like, I also follow Phil Morse and his Digital DJ Tips. I can only recommend that to all of you. Like,
yep.
Check that out. He's doing a fantastic job as well. I learned so much there too. So that's a good one too. If you speak to him, say hi to me. Hi from me, please.
I will certainly relay the message, Chris. Don't worry about it. So that's the. But are you planning to build on that Alone Together brand a little bit more in the future with new streams, or was that strictly a pandemic thing? And is the real world, the real life of a DJ taking over now? No time to do them anymore, and I can imagine, take some preparation to do. And what are your plans with it? Was it a pandemic thing, or do you think, oh no, I'm still plan to do pop-up DJ sets on YouTube, and what other platform you use?
I mean, in the beginning, it was definitely a pandemic thing, but I found out that I really enjoyed the process. Not only the process of DJing, obviously, again, like in the pandemic, but also of the whole technical side of things. I've learned so much about streaming, about placing cameras, doing, learning how to use Restream and streaming software, camera software that I can choose the angles and everything. Basically setting up a club, like with a fog machine, with stroboscopes and everything. And that basically put me back to my roots again. And I really loved that experience. And also to essentially do this all on your own as well. It's like from basically hitting the button to that the fog machine is running, checking that the stream is still running, looking which camera you have activated right now, which track you want to play next, if everything is still working, if there's still music coming out of the other side. I really enjoyed that process, really, and I do believe I'm going to continue this, and maybe one day we'll do Alone Together party somewhere where I invite everybody who's watching the thing to come in real time, and we still stream it. I didn't really think much about it yet, but occasionally the streams will still happen. I still have my stream studio in Frankfurt, so that can work.
And then of course, but I can imagine that was totally a pandemic thing. You had the DJs and beers stream, where you had guests like Dubfire, Drum Cell, Truncate, Matt Edwards, the guy from Radio Slave, and just were basically like we are right now, talking tech and everything else that is happening in the DJ world. Yeah, I really don't drink when I'm on the job, so this is just water, but I can imagine.
This is without alcohol, actually. So I'm fine.
Okay. I don't judge, each his own, but I know myself, and I just want to stay very clear when I'm on the job. I always did that when I was an active DJ, and I always kept that going.
But I have to correct you in one thing. Actually, Dubfire, Radio Slave, Truncate, and Drum Cell, they were not guests. We did the whole show together.
Yeah, you did. Sorry, that's what I meant. That was just the guys hanging out together with beer, and just.
That was the case. Like once we drank more beers, the whole conversation loosened up a little bit. We needed that in the beginning. Yes.
Yeah, but that's always the case, of course, especially if you are not that close together and you just know each other from passing by and each other from work. Then it's always very hard to find that common ground and that the conversation really goes easy. I must admit for myself that I'm doing this show also because of the pandemic and the fact that I got so many questions each week from DJs using my tools that I thought, all right, why not bundle that all and just share all that knowledge with whoever wants it, and then see what happens with it. But when I'm doing it alone, then I often find myself too pragmatic and just going, all right, this is the goal, this is what I want to tell you, listen to me, and then I go too fast, I skip things. When you are with a person like right now, then you can take your time, and that person basically mirrors what I try to say, and that really helps me as a person. So thank you for that also. If we take it back, because you said streaming feels a little bit like our origins, and I say our origins, we are roughly the same age. When we started out DJing, the word didn't even exist. I, as a DJ, started out at high school parties with 2-belt driven turntables, no mixer at all. I had a knob that I could go back and forth. How did you start out as a DJ? What was your first gear that you can kind of say it is DJ gear?
Oh my God. Honestly, you cannot call it DJ gear. My first, let's say, sound system that I had was when on my 14th birthday, I got this little compact stereo system, which by a German company called Schneider. Some might remember this.
Yeah, I know. It's from the Weekamp, from the catalog.
Yeah.
The catalog sellers sold the Schneider kits.
Yes, exactly. And it was a turntable, it was a radio, and it had a tape deck, and that was essentially it. And before this, I had like just tape decks, basically. Tape decks that you could place next to your bed and just record radio shows or chart shows, which we had in Germany, which were kind of the source where you were listening to new music, the only source in a way, other than going to a record store and looking through the new records that you had. But so the key was you always had to buy a lot of blank tapes and get this little skill in to not record the radio moderator, the host, who's always talking over the track, was like, oh no, don't do this. And then you would just like record your mixtapes like this. And I had a lot of mixtapes like this. I had a lot of tapes where I wrote down which tracks are where. And when we were like 15, 16, and we started to do little, let's say, school parties, you know, in friends' basements, or maybe in a clubhouse of the tennis club or some other club. And I found myself, it was kind of natural that I found myself setting up 2 tape decks, also a dip switch kind of thing, you know, and then hit play on the one tape deck, and the track was running. We're not calling them tracks. It was just music pieces that were running, like, I don't know, Sledgehammer, Peter Gabriel, like basically hits of the 80s, you know. And by the time that track was over, you better had forwarded or rewinded the other tape deck to the next track that you wanted to play. You had to find it, you know. It was like not that you You had to listen to it. Oh, where am I? Oh, this is this track. This is the beginning. And oh, it's over. Chunk, clack, over. Next track is running. And that was kind of my humble beginnings as a DJ.
You had those counters on those tape decks, and
Yes.
those were not digital counters, my friend. Those were just counters. Basically, they were mileage counters. They just measured how much mile the tape traveled, and that wasn't very precise. And you needed to put them to 0 when you inserted the tape. And if you then made an index with the numbers and with the times, you could say, all right, that particular number, that track will be at index that and that. But if you forgot to reset the counter, then you couldn't find it. Or if you had the wrong side of the tape in front of you, then you couldn't find it. So those were really the days.
Or you had a completely different tape deck, and then the counter was running in a completely different.
that one too. And I was kind of spoiled because I was at a very young age. I had this uncle who had a reel-to-reel 4-track Sony deck. But because reel-to-reel was more used in my youth than compact cassettes, and he was getting rid of it, and I could buy it for very cheap money for the little money I made. So basically, I didn't start out with compact cassettes. I started out with reel-to-reel, and I think that is one of the things that really benefited me, because that gave you much more control about finding the right track. You still had the same issues with having the tape counter correct, but at least that gave me some real benefits over the guys who started out with compact cassettes. But hey, those were the days. And speaking of which, I don't want this to take too fast, because this for me is this is old man tales. Let's face it. But I think the younger generation can learn a lot from this as well, because in those days there was no way for us to know where the cue points. We didn't have any cue points. Vinyl, well, you needed a pitch control turntable. Those were in short supply and costed real money, and we are not talking about 12s. We are just talking about, my first pitch control deck was Dual. I think it was a German brand.
Yes.
Which wasn't that bad, but the pitch control was like a knob you could rotate. There was no real indication how much you pitched it up or down, not at all. So those were real hard days. But then came the moment, Chris, that you came from those basement parties to your first kind of club gig. Could you tell us how you came there? How did you get a gig as a DJ in a club?
Sure. First of all, a little fun fact, I still am not entirely sure what a cue point is. Maybe you can explain that to me later. I have
Sure.
idea, but what's the difference of a cue point and what is it, hot cue? It's still a mystery to me, honestly. Well, as I said, I was always very much into music. That was kind of like when I was from maybe 13, 14 years old on. And I grew up in a very tiny little village, not even in Frankfurt, just 80 kilometers outside of Frankfurt. And I had an older brother who had I still have an older brother, and who had a really amazing record selection already. So sometimes I stole some records out of his room and were listening to them in my room when I had my little Schneideranlage. And
just a quick question. What kind of records were those? What did Chris Liebing listen to when he was a youngster?
Oh, he had, let's say, early Genesis, early Peter Gabriel. I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan from the early days. Like, it's incredible what he does. When I actually, the albums that I'm making on Mute Records right now, like the second album is coming out soon, it's actually like Peter Gabriel, let's say the early Peter Gabriel stuff is a blueprint for me. It's really something that I still want to like get out in the world, like my digestion of old Peter Gabriel stuff. But it was
not only musical. The guy was a true genius. He was the first one who made an interactive CD-ROM. Even before CD-ROMs were interactive, way before the internet. He was the very first guy who made, that was CDI, I think it was called, the technology. and that was the Secret World Tour, if I'm not mistaken. And there he had this CD, and you could put it in your computer, and then you could click around and something would happen. That was unseen before. Of course, if you are today on the internet, you think, all right, what's special about this? But for those days, that was incredible visionary of a musician, a great musician, because like you, I'm a great Peter Gabriel fan. But please go on.
So yeah, and some of the other stuff was like early or also contemporary David Bowie. My brother was listening to quite a lot of also Pink Floyd, this kind of rock stuff. I was very early a big fan of The Doors. I still am. I think the first Doors album was an absolutely fantastic album. If people who haven't listened to this, check out The Doors. It's called The Doors album. And by the way, I may mention that on my Instagram page, I have the best albums of all from my point of view. And I have a highlights story there that you can check out where I listed like some of my most favorite albums, because I'm still also very much an album listener and I really enjoy albums. And that's why I'm actually still trying to do albums, hoping that people will still take the time to listen to an album from the beginning up to the end. Because if I may, I'm not sure how long you have time with this show, but if I may...
I've got all night, and I forgot to ask you how long you have. But usually this stream go on until we think, all right, we have said what we want, and
that's great. Because I would love to elaborate a little bit more, so younger audiences can relate to what we're saying.
Sure. Go ahead. You should.
So I had a huge music selection, and I get to the point where I had my first club gig. So I built this big music collection, and I started to buy records myself. I got into in the early 80s. I got into a lot of, actually, which I found out later, because I was never really looking for labels when I bought the records. That was not the thing. You were like, if you were a real super music nerd, which I maybe wasn't that much, you would always check out what label is this from and check out like what other. So later on, I found out a lot of the early music that I was listening to was coming from mute records. Like obviously Depeche Mode. I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan. And so this kind of electronic music kind of grabbed me very early. And when you went out to buy new records, you had let's say a limited amount of money, funds available to go out and buy new records. So maybe you had 20 marks at most 20 marks in a week to spend on a record. Maybe 10 marks, which is today's money, €5. A double vinyl album would cost around like 17 marks back in the days. Some of the albums, single vinyl albums, were like maybe 12, 13 marks. So you really had to pick and choose what you wanted to buy. Of course, other stuff you would just record from the radio all the time. But some of the albums you really wanted to have. And I became a very early Queen fan as well. I still think that Freddie Mercury is like one of his kind. I even went to Montreux where his statue is standing there, and paid my respect to the Freddie Mercury statue there. And so when you bought those records, you went home and you were basically put them on your turntable, and you were listening to them till you fell asleep from the beginning to the end, and you turned them around and listened to it again from the beginning to the end. And why I'm saying this is I have two daughters, and they're now they're 15 and 12 years old. And just last week I visited, I was with them in a record store, and they were looking for these old records. Obviously, they're influenced by my own music taste from the early 80s and mid 80s and even 90s a little bit. So we found like old David Bowie albums and all this, and a Beach Boy album. And so they got these albums. And while I was looking at them, going through the albums, looking at the covers, I found, wow, this is really something that a lot of people today are missing out on. And I
Not only that. I totally with you. I totally hear what you say, because I was that guy too. But indeed, you had limited funds, so you thought twice before you spent it on something, which means the moment you decided that a certain record was worth your money, you knew that record already from beginning to end. You knew all the tracks, you knew what you could expect, and then you bought it and you invested in it. You invested your attention in it. You tried to grab what the record is really all about. And you knew that record inside out. These days, and that's not a complaint, it's just what the times are. You have a streaming service, Spotify, and you pick the 3 favorite tracks from your artist. And as far as your world is, those 3 tracks are the only thing that particular artist ever made. And maybe you know them, or maybe you know them not. I even see that happening to myself these days, that it is so easy to get all the music in. I could only dream about that when I was starting out, because when I was starting out, my most important problem was not get the gear, because there was no gear. I had my turntables and I had my flip switches and I had my reel-to-reel deck, and I could make mixes with that. But my biggest problem was, how do I get the tracks? Where do I get the vinyl from? How am I going to pay for that? Those were my real issues. The first gigs I did in real clubs, I didn't want payment. I just wanted to have access to the equipment in the afternoon so I could make my remixes. That was all I asked for. Simple as that. Just tell the manager, listen, you don't need to pay me. I'm totally fine with no pay. However, I want access to the vinyl that is there. I want to be the person in charge of buying that vinyl if I was the residence DJ. And I want to have access to the gear just to make, and people cannot imagine that today, because what do you mean you don't have the track? You have Tidal, right? You have BeatSource Link, don't you? You have every track that was ever made. But the whole journey an artist was making, especially guys like Peter Gabriel, but the Doors too. The Doors in the very early age already tried to tell a story on their albums. And if you just drop in the middle of it, maybe it is a fun track to listen to, but you didn't get the whole intention of the album. And I can imagine that you are doing the same things these days with your albums. You want to tell a tale.
Yeah, it is. It's a give and take. The beauty of it is, if we were forced to listen to basically the whole album at home, because there was nothing else then to listen to. So you got really deep into the music. Or another solution was, you found like 4 or 5 friends who were also music enthusiasts, and then you were like saying, like, you buy this album, you buy this album, you buy this album, and then you just pass the albums around and you record them on your cassette tapes. But what I noticed with my daughters when they were going through the albums and they're picking out like, oh, this album, I want to have this. I looked at them and I asked them, like, wow, you guys only look at Spotify right now. Isn't that a whole different feeling that you're looking at this now? So we got a bunch of vinyls and we took them home, and they have this little cheap record player, and they were really, I set it up, for them, and they were really excited to put this old record on to listen to it from the first track, which I found like, wow, this is so nice that they get to experience this. So in today's world, I mean, the great thing about Spotify or other streaming services is that you discover a lot of new music that back in those days we didn't discover, really, unless you had a really well sorted record store with a very intense person working there who got the records from all over the world. Now you can like go spend a whole night on Spotify and discover loads of new music, which is absolutely amazing. So this is the great thing. But at the same time, I would love to maybe inspire people who are listening now, or recommend to people, like, go on Spotify, pick an album, like for example The Doors, or a Massive Attack album, or a Radiohead album, and just lean back, put the mouse away, lean back and just listen to the whole thing.
Start at track 1 and walk away.
Yeah, it's a whole nother experience. And I know it's kind of a lost art, but I still believe in this, and that's why I put a lot of effort into this album. But coming back to your original question.
No, we are not through with the vinyl, because I think the emphasis must be on that word experience. Playing a record is an experience. You cannot switch on your phone and play a record. You have to turn up the turntable. Most of the time you have to turn on the amplifier. If it's very old, you have to wait until it warms up before it makes any sound at all. Then you have to manually put the needle on the groove, and that whole process makes you ready for listening and experiencing an album instead of just consuming audio, because that is what Spotify has become. It's consuming audio.
Yeah, that is a very true thing. There's a whole ritual to it, and this is what I've noticed with my daughters as well. They got the record out. I taught them how to get the records out of the sleeve, how to hold the record, and then put it on. Obviously, they grew up with me having records around, So, but buying an album like from the Beach Boys, it was like, okay, this is the first track. Let's leave.
I'm curious, Chris, because my heart is normally with hip hop and soul and R&B, and so turntablism and that kind of stuff is really my thing. However, from those early days, I still have this particular way of taking a record out of the sleeve. Let me get one and let me just show you. And I want to know, are you that guy too, or are you the guy who does it different? Hold on.
Hi guys. I'm actually reading your comments here, by the way, and it's good to see you all who also be in the on the Alone Together stream. So let's see. Oh, wonderful!
I think let's keep it on cue.
I was looking. I don't have a record here. I'm. Oh my God.
So I am used to just taking it out like this, putting it on, using it, and just holding it like this.
That's the way you hold a record.
However, most of those turntablist guys, they abuse the record. They put their fingers all over it, and I don't know what. So I was curious. How do you hold your records?
Like exactly like this. You never. You never tap your records with your.
No. You don't want the acid from your fingers or from sweat from your fingers on the grooves at all, and you just have to be. To do them very carefully. On the other hand, if I'm on DVS, on digital vinyl system, so I use a record with just a tone to control my Traktor, then I abuse that thing all over. Then I really don't care what is happening, and but this kind of records, preferably with the inner sleeve intact, so it is usually a sleeve in a sleeve, and then just hold the edges to keep it the way it should be.
Exactly. So your background is more like, let's say, hip hop turntablism.
No, that's my love. I'm not good at it. I'm not. I think your heroes are my heroes. That's very simply put. Indeed, if you say Massive Attack, of course, Massive Attack. Those were my heroes too. And we will get to the early day bangers later on, because I have this idea that my floor fillers were your floor fillers as well. But I just want to compare notes there. But just let's first get to that first gig, because I get a lot of questions from aspirational DJs these days in my stream that ask me, "Yo, Mixmaster G, how can I get my first gig?" And then my answer is always the same. It is very simple. Go out, be at the venue. Make sure that the people at the venue know that you are a DJ. Make sure that you are likable to them. Socialize with them. Talk to the doorman. Talk to the bartender. Talk to the DJ, but not too much, because that guy is working. Make sure that they all know that you are a DJ, and the moment that there is a problem because the DJ is sick, the DJ has to go for whatever reason, they walk to you and they say, "Hey, you're the DJ, try it out." And that is your entry to becoming a DJ. It is not putting your tapes on Mixcloud. It is not putting your tapes on SoundCloud. If you are Chris Liebing, then you can do that, because then you have an audience. But if you are Mr. Nobody from the bedroom, then people need to know you. And Facebook doesn't allow it anymore, and it's not really an ideal medium. The real thing, the thing that worked back 40 years ago is still the stuff that works today. I'm convinced about that. Go out, talk to the people. But how did it work for you?
I agree totally to what you're saying. That is, you have to learn how to start DJing in front of a live crowd in a small club, and get in touch with the people in the like do not be too forward, you know, don't run in as like, I want to DJ here. Go there, listen for weeks to the music that is running there. At some point, maybe speak to the DJ a little bit and just get a conversation going. Drop here and there that you're also DJing, and maybe I can play at some point if you feel like saying this. You know, it's kind of a very, you have to approach this with a bit of a feeling. Or like in my case, have an older sister who works behind the bar in that club. That was the case that happened with me. There was the club needed another DJ for a Thursday night, which was not really happening for them. And my sister was like, "Oh, my brother, he has like his huge music selection. He always plays at his friends' parties. Maybe you want to try him one time." And at that time, I actually even couldn't mix yet. That was because I'd never had two turntables at my own place. I've never owned two turntables really. So that was in 1990, so 30 years ago. And my sister told me the next day, "Hey, they're looking for a DJ in the club that I'm working," which I have been millions of times in there before too. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I'm happy to try that." And so one day I walked in the afternoon, and there was the main resident DJ expecting me. And he was like, "Okay, just like tell me a little bit about your music knowledge." They had a record collection in the booth already, which used to be the case back in these days, that you had all your music in there. And then he was just like, "Look through the music and play like for half an hour some music here for me now." And then I was just looking through the stuff and got some SOS Band, you know, some Kool and the Gang, some Chaka Khan, you name it, you know. And I just put it.
I think we are already comparing notes of bangers, floor fillers, and those make it indeed. Just Be Good to Me by the SOS Band, always a floor filler. Yeah. If I think back of those days that I look very old for my age back then. So I started DJing at the age of 15. I had a real club residency. Wow. Also by luck, because that used to be a very small dancing, they called it back in those days, discotheque dancing, in the village I lived in. And I just, because I knew the owners and they knew that I was into music and that I always did school nights, etc. So I kind of grew in that from, those were the days that you had a Sunday afternoon opening. That was for the non-teens, and that grew out to Saturday evening, Friday evening, etc., etc. But that was 1984 that I started out. And
what city was this?
Sorry?
What city was this?
A very tiny little city called Oud-Aarde. Huh. Like old Amsterdam dance event, Oud-Aarde. And it is a tourist city. It is to the Kagerplassen. They have these big lakes around it. So in the winter there were virtually no people there, but it was the only club in like a 20-kilometer radius, so everybody came there, and it was always open. There were no closing times, and it was very progressive. But it was still not meaning any disrespect, but it was farmers' country, and my music was real disco, funk, jazz, soul. House wasn't there at all. It was just disco funk, and we in Holland were very privileged because we had a program by Ferry Maat named the Soul Show, and the Soul Show, 2-hour show each Thursday evening, had records that were not in the top 40 or commercial, but they did use the Billboard Hot 100 chart as their chart, and they had the dance chart. The Billboard charts had the dance chart. So in Europe, and you knew how hard it was to come by new music, we were hearing what was played in the States, in the clubs in the States, and that was really the music I grew up with, taught by this Soul Show. But that wasn't at all the music I could play in this particular club, because that club expected more like, I always call it après-ski music, just the simple 4 on the floor music, mainly top 40. If you knew the top 40s from the current one till 5 years ago, you would be fine, you could play every evening. Mixing was not done, they really hated it if you abbreviated versions. Don't play a remix at all because, hey, we are just singing and just going in the vibe and then you do something else and they really couldn't stand. So it was a totally different experience from being, but it teaches you a lot because it teaches you how to read a floor and to see what needs to be played in order to keep them going. So I heard you say, let's say Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. That was a guaranteed floor filler for me. My biggest floor filler ever, and Armin van Buren, because Armin lives just a few blocks away, really hates this because when he was starting out, it was also around that age, people kept requesting that particular record, even if he was doing his own 10 very young productions. That was Dan Hartman by Relight My Fire. That was the guaranteed floor filler if you had a dead dance floor. Dan Hartman's Relight My Fire would always fill the floor. And you can ask Armin if you talk to him. He was in the same area. He was later than me, but I've heard from him several times that he really hated from his beginning days the fact that people were still requesting Dan Hartman's Relight My Fire. But that was a guaranteed floor filler. Tom Brown, Funking for Jamaica, was one that really filled the floor too. Viola Wills, If You Could Read My Mind. I can go, but I was more into the American, I was more into Alexander O'Neill and stuff like that, or into Depeche Mode, but then not the popular stuff of Depeche Mode, but more the off-popular stuff, because Depeche Mode made such a great 12-inch singles, and those were masterpieces. But I couldn't play them because they were totally different from the radio versions, but they were so great. Or everything produced by Trevor Horn. That was also great.
Yeah. Ain't Nobody Chaka Khan. You have all the ladies on the dance floor with this one. Or I was more kind of like in the soul days this time. Dennis Edwards, the Commodores.
Kool and the Gang.
Cool at the Gang. Sometimes if you wanted to have a little bit more party vibe going. But you're right, you know, I started playing at this club then. They offered me to start out on the Thursday night where was literally no people coming. But the only advantage this club had was it was the only place in our little town which was open till 3 at night. So after one, when everything else was closing, people started to come in. And I started this Thursday night there. And the one thing that I did a little different, I think, from the beginning without knowing, I never really wanted to play the most obvious stuff, you know. I wanted to try to stay away from like the biggest hits that everybody was playing in that club, and I tried to do it a little different. And I think that helped me to separate myself a little bit from others. But to get back to most of the questions, like how do you become a DJ in a club? How do you get a club gig? You obviously have to be at the right time at the right place, but and that's a little bit of luck involved, or a lot of luck. But you can influence. You can set the circumstances so you're more likely to be at the right time in the right place. And that through my career, that happened quite a bit. I can account.
I'm so with you. Not only with the club that only became busy after 1 o'clock, because like I said, we didn't have a closing time. So indeed, everybody came to our club after 1 a.m. But I needed to be there from 10. So right. I was working like from 10 to like 6 a.m. Those were ridiculous times, but I did it with love. I always enjoyed that. Sorry, I interrupted you. But,
no. I mean, you got to love the Dutch dance scene and the nightlife scene. It's unique in the whole world, and it still is. I always joke about this, but I think it's true. It's like, I think the Netherlands is the biggest party country in the world if you account the amount of parties there is to the amount of people that live in this country. It always blew my mind, and you have this.
But that also, of course, for a huge part, is thankful to guys like Ferry Maat, who did the Soul Show, to the VPRO, who had a very progressive program with electronic music way before house became a thing at all. There were like my friend Ben Liebrand, what he did for the DJs. He taught us literally, he invented remixing and mixing tracks with stuff that if you see it today you think, holy shit, is that record produced with only that?
You know him?
Yeah, sure.
I used to buy so many Ben Liebrand mixes. You could buy them on vinyl, and they were like 25 minutes long, and they had all the hits like mixed into each other.
Those were bootlegs, my friend. Those were not coming from Ben. They were from him. They were broadcasted on Dutch radio because Ben did that. Ben had we basically had a few programs. Let me go over them. We had Ben Liebrand with In the Mix each Friday evening at 2 a.m. in the morning to 3 a.m. non-stop, and there he mixed. That was a prepared set, so it was on tape. Cheers, my friend. And he played that was played, and I always needed to work at that time, so I always told him, listen buddy, needed to work, so I had this timer, so analog timer, and I made a rec play pressed on my tape deck, so it would start at the correct time, 2 a.m., and then record. He said, so I could listen back what he did, because I knew one thing, there was at least 3-4 new fire records that I really wanted to have in those sets. And then each year he made a year mix, and he made, of course, things like Dinges Holiday with Micah G and DJ Sven, Holiday Rap. Which you better not mention, but he made that too. He had his finger in a lot of things, but besides that all, the man was a genius with stuff that we take for granted now. He had, for instance, he made a grand mix each year. That was a non-stop mix with all the hits of the year. I still do that each year too. But then I saw the stuff he used. He had two SL12s, and they had this piece of wire that was turning with the record, and that wire would hit another wire and then start the other SL12 just to make sure that those two started on time, on the exact time that he wanted, and then he was taping that and he was cutting that up. That kind of gear, that is genius, if you can imagine that. But we had that guy on the Dutch radio. Then we had another program where actually the name of my collective came from, that was called And the Beat Goes On. That was a 1-hour non-stop dance mix show produced by 3 different DJs. And one of those DJs was named Peter. So I really wanted to name my DJ collective And the Beat Goes On. But I couldn't do that because then they would mistaken me for the radio show, and because that guy was also named Peter, so I decided to go for And the Groove Remains instead of And the Beat Goes On. So that's where that came from. But we in Holland had so many, on the Dutch radio, things going on with dance that it is logical that guys like Armin van Buuren, like Tiesto, and still are coming from the Netherlands. We were fed this stuff, but we didn't have any tools to produce, so we had to be creative, and that creativity you can still see in the club scene.
Oh, absolutely. It's Netherlands dominated the dance music world at some point. Essentially, Dutch DJs were all over the place, everywhere. First, it was more the English DJs, like Sasha Dickweed generation, and then the Dutch DJs just like flooded the market like crazy in the early 2000s.
Yep, and they all came from that very same place, like Armin, because Armin, his talents as a producer, got him into contact with Ben Liebrand. He was just this little guy just knocking on Ben's door, and Ben, same as with me, Ben had the equipment, so Ben heard the talent Armin had and just said to him, all right, you can use my stuff, and he could use Ben's studio to make his first communications thing and stuff like that. It's just because that was all not readily available. It was only available if you were persistent and of course if you had talent. But it's amazing that it is still possible. But you were this basically open format club DJ, which was a little bit off the normal path, which was a little bit slightly with an alternative twist twist,
Yeah.
let's call it like that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there must be a moment that you thought, all right, but this sound, this thing called electro, but it didn't have that name back then. That is really my vibe. That is really what drives. What triggered you in there?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I want to get back to a little bit to what some might question, like with being at the right time at the right place. Again, I wanted to get back to this. You have to be obviously prepared in that moment.
Yep.
So there comes a lot of, it's just like, if you want to be a DJ and like, first of all, maybe look deep inside yourselves, like, why do you want to become a DJ? And if it's about that you want to really share the music that you love with a lot of people and you want to convince them that this is the music they should listen to. Like, if I play you music, then like you need to listen to this tape or this selection of music because I think I know exactly what I'm doing to put you in the right mood. If this is kind of like in you and that's the passion you have, then you automatically spend enough time already at home and work on your knowledge, because being a DJ also requires quite a bit of knowledge. You need to know the music that you're playing, obviously, and you need to know a little bit about music history. So if you have that, and then you work on being in clubs, then you're automatically kind of putting yourself into a position where somebody might say like, huh, this guy, we should ask him, maybe he should play like 2 hours of music. So for me, it was I was playing those Thursday nights, and they became actually quite successful because I was playing a little bit of a different twist in music. A lot of students started to show up. And also what I would recommend is, like, if you start DJing in a club, get all your friends in. Like, tell everyone. Like, tell everyone to come and to support you, to come in, just so there is a base of people already in there. And even if you promise them to get free beers or something, that's always good to have a supporting crowd already with you. And then I eventually started to play on Saturdays as well. And I started to become at some point kind of the main resident of this club. And I played there until end of 92 about. No, end of 93. So I played in this club for quite a bit. There were other clubs which I was resident there, which I would maybe sometimes venture out and play a night there, if that was possible. But I started to realize when I was playing the music that I played there, that I started to get a little bit bored about kind of as much as I love all that soul stuff, you know, at some point you played enough Chaka Khan and enough cool.
It is the same set of records in a slightly different order, but
yeah, there's some new stuff coming in, and we had some good new stuff in the beginning of the 90s. We had the Sound of Frankfurt, you know, we had all these Frankfurt producers, Logic Records coming in, Zux Records, you know, Mr. Vane and all that stuff that came in.
And you had the Belgians. The Belgians came out with their sound, which was a little bit pre-acid sound, what they made. So there was a lot of new stuff going, and that triggered for you the moment that you said, all right, I'm going to more specialize myself in this. Back then, I started gravitating towards the faster music. I started gravitating to the BPMs, which were around like 125 or something like this, and not around 101, 100. Like, you know, when you look back to live, for example, or tracks like this, they were around like 102, 107 BPM. Yep, those were the slow ones.
And there were great, amazing grooves, but I started to kind of gravitate towards the faster stuff more and more. And you know, the owner of the club didn't really like to see me play techno, and so I could sneak in like the occasional old LFO, you know, record at the end, you know, so to send the people home, or JD Plastic Dreams or something like this, you know. So it was those records where I was like, I really want to play more of that music.
Yeah, that is early house trance vibe. You know that JD is a Dutch guy too, right?
What?
JD is a Dutch guy too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And it's actually meant DJ, but then spelled backward. And he also was one of the guys, because he was a radio host. And he was also one of those guys that were, then I was already lowering my DJ interest, because we are now talking early 90s. And I had different things to pursue. But my DJ heart never died, so I always kept invested. But I still played at clubs. But just to give you a very brief of my story, I have, like I just explained earlier, I always played sober. And in those days, acid and other types of stimulus came to the scene. And I felt that I could no longer really connect to my crowd, because they were all in their bubble. And I was not sharing that bubble with them. I was in my own thing, and I knew how to mix, I knew everything, but I wasn't feeling it as much as they were feeling it. And that disconnection made me decide, all right, Pete, just do your stuff at home, just make your remixes, just enjoy what you are always enjoying, but don't push yourself. And I know for myself that I'm a little bit addiction minded, so I was too afraid that I would like stimulus too much, so that's why I said, all right, I'm not going to even touch it, just to make sure that that is not going to be a problem for me. So that is where the moment that JD, etc. came up was when I was going from like 4 nights a week playing at clubs to 1 night a week, and then slowly taking it back and doing different stuff. But those were great days. The music of those days were great.
Oh, it was mind blowing, because there was so much new stuff happening.
Yep.
Because people were influencing each other, and the technology advanced. New synthesizers were released almost on a weekly basis with new sounds, and everybody started to experiment and all these things. And I really got this electronic music virus in me. And
Talking about that, of course, obviously we needed a computer, and basically there were 2 kinds of computers you had. You had the Atari crew and you had the Commodore crew. Which one was you?
Atari ST.
I was an Amiga user, or actually Commodore 64 before that, but I was one of the Amiga guys. But the Atari was the MIDI computer to have.
Yeah, it was essentially, I mean, I started producing in, let's say, 94. And it was Atari ST with, I think it was called Notator, the sequencing software. Some really, essentially just MIDI notes that you could put in.
Yep.
Nothing else.
But that was unique, because the Atari had that MIDI port.
Absolutely.
We had the better sound chip. We had a stereo 8-bit sound chip, but you guys had the MIDI port.
Yes.
And if you had a synthesizer that talked MIDI, well, you could do amazing thing with it. And there are so many early 90s records produced on Atari STs. It's amazing. And if you look what that software can do today, you think, really, did they make that with only that?
Yeah.
So your production and your DJing kind of grew hand in hand.
Which again proves the point that it's not about the equipment that you have when you produce, right? We're getting back to this. Yeah, so basically in 93, I started to be like, I want to play more of that techno stuff. But coincidentally, the owner of this club, which was just a small place, it was like 350, maybe 300 people maximum in this place, but it had the license to go to 3. He was like, oh, I'm tired. I've done this club now for 15 years. Do you like this techno music? Don't you want to just take over, rename the club, rebuild it a little bit inside, and you take over? And I was like, wait a minute. This, like, nobody, I already at home played a lot of techno. I bought a lot of techno. I never could play it. There was already a techno scene happening in our little city with other DJs, well-known DJs actually, that also came from my little town, like Pascal Feos, rest in peace, who sadly passed away during the pandemic. Tony Rios, Frank Lorber, both residents at the Omen Club later on as well. They all came from this little village where I basically.
All right.
And they already had a techno scene going. And Marco Canata, another friend of mine, they were really involved in the techno scene. We had a really good record store called Downtown Records in Gießen, run by my friend Tommy Bingel. And he was very forward thinking. He kind of really was involved in finding the best records, with working with the best distributions around. We had really good distributions in our area in Frankfurt as well, and outside places that were extremely well connected to US distributions. So all the early Strictly Rhythm music, all the house records, Masters of at Work, everything came over, and we had it pretty fresh, as well as obviously the Belgium sections with a lot of music. So we were kind of blessed by 93, 92 already, with a huge, nice selection of music and a great record store in my little town. And when I started buying those techno records more and more, I actually spoke to the owner, Tommy, at that time, and I said, like, Tommy, can you put away some of those techno records for me so the others don't notice it? Because I was known as this, let's say, commercial DJ.
Yeah.
And I didn't want them to know that I'm also interested in all this techno stuff. So I was like kind of like secretly buying that stuff in this record store. But I could never play it. And the owner of the club knew this, and he was like, why don't you do this? And I was studying at that point, which didn't really fulfill me. And I was like, you know what? Nobody ever would book me as a DJ. As a techno DJ, nobody's going to come and book me as a techno DJ. There are so many techno DJs around already. So I got to book myself, as easy as it is. So how do you book yourself as a techno DJ? You just run your own club, and you put yourself on a Saturday night. and that's kind of what I did. So in January 1994, I opened my own club. I called it Spin Club. It was in the same location as the place where I first started DJing, just 4 years later. And I started to do the Saturday night with techno. And I actually started out, that was how early that was for me. I started those Saturday nights out, like we had a Thursday night, we had a house night. We had a great house DJ playing. On Friday, it was kind of the funk and soul night, because he still had to do this. And on Saturday, it was the techno and house night. But when I started playing Saturday, I started playing with acid jazz. That's how I kind of started, piano and stuff like this. And then you would slowly morph into, let's say, more soulful house records, and go into a little strictly rhythm style kind of music. I was a huge fan, and I'm still a huge fan of DJ Pierre.
Yep. That's also, by the way, a friend of the program. Pierre is. He is so great. He's such a nice guy.
I've never met him in person yet. No, and we've been texting so much in the past 2 years. We've been talking on the phone, and I've been telling him what a big influence he was in my life with his wild pitch sound, especially the wild pitch sound. Raving Lunatics. I love those 13-minute records, which are just evolving, and they're still influencing me up till today. Basically, it's like this is the blueprint as well for me for techno. It's like really wild acid lines, or lines that go on for like 13, 14 minutes, and he's a master at that. He's just
he's great at that. But I had a masterclass. I had the honor to have a masterclass at Amsterdam Dance Event 2018. I think that's where I met him, because I had to leave his masterclass, but it was in a very small room. So I had to leave that masterclass. But like I told you, I'm like 2 meters long. So if I'm leaving a room, you will notice that somebody is leaving the room. So I came up after the meeting to him and excused myself. Sorry, Pierre, I really needed to go. And then that guy is so friendly. If you listen to his music, and if you listen to what he produces and what he creates, which is basically noise, more noise and harder noise, he is such a gentle person. He's such a sweet guy. And now he's working with that body pack with music. I don't know if he talked about it with you, but that's really his thing now. He has this variable subwoofer, which is actually, I think it came from the gaming scene, but he is really a fan of that. It's like a backpack with a subwoofer in it, and you put it on, and you feel the bass inside your whole body, like you are in a club with everything blowing. Such a nice guy, great guy.
Oh, great guy. And so coming back to the club, I started to run my own club. I booked myself as a DJ, and that's how I started to play more and more techno in my club. I have to say that I have never been a business person. So after about 1 year and 3 months, I was completely bankrupt. Um, because I kind of knew everybody who came to the club. I let in everybody for free. I always handed out beers to everyone. And the rent was actually pretty high. So I think it was kind of like beginning of in May '95 that I could not pay money back to the bank, and I basically had to close the club, and that was my time as a club owner. But and I went out with quite a bit of debt, actually, which kind of prevented me to go back to university because I needed to pay this back. And I didn't really want to go back to university. And that's where the next step came. Because in the meantime, I made friends with the techno circle of Pascal Feos, Tony Rios, Frank Lorber, Marco Canata. And by that time, Tony Rios was working for IQ Records in Offenbach, near Frankfurt, which is the same building of the Logic record store, Sony Logic, where, for example, Dance to Trance was released, Snap, and all these Frankfurt-produced sounds. It was like incredible what came out of Frankfurt.
Which were huge at those times.
Yeah, it was huge.
Really huge.
Obviously, and Ancelotti and Münzing were the producers, and they were also co-owners of the Omen Club. And Sven Feth was running IQ Records, which had the sister label Hard House. And this is where I, together with my production partner back in the time, Andre Walter, who I also did all the Stigmata stuff with, released my first record on Hard House Records. If you guys want to look it up, it's called Traveler. We released 2 records on Hard House, and
what was that under the Chris Liebing name already, Chris, or did you have a fantasy name?
All project names. I didn't use my own name before '97, I believe. It was late '96, '97. The first time I used my name. I had a million project names before. We started a label called Soap Records, where we actually kind of had pretty good success from '95 on. Which was more.
But that is how things worked in those days. You had project names, and that was basically it. You had studio bands which didn't really exist and just made excellent records, and you really didn't know what the records were. So that kind of stuff was really new.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I started working actually at the label. I started working at the music label IQ Records.
Okay.
And talking about being at the right time at the right place again, in must have been early '95. I was sitting in my office, and it was a Friday, and DJ Good Groove, who was playing.
Just excuse me for 2 minutes or 2 seconds, because Yvette, you need a new charger for the laptop. Laptop is running low.
Laptop is running low. This is the moment where I'm drinking a beer with you guys. Are you still listening, actually? Is this taking too long for you guys, or are you still interested in listening to what are we saying? Give us some comments in this. I'm still trying to find out if somebody still are listening, or if there are, if they're.
We've got 27 people as far as my counter goes, joining us with our old man tales. So we are. And this is smoking thing. Put the ones in the chat. Yeah, that's always that's a typical Twitch thing from the turntablism guys. You just put your ones in the chat just to let us know that you are with us. But
so coming back to you have the charger now.
She has a charger, but she was sneaking. I think, what's going on? Somebody's sneaking at my feet, but she is really camera shy. So she thought, all right, I sneak around, just get the charger and then sneak back. But I don't hear anything, so I think we are good to go.
Good. I'll try to speed it up a little bit so we get to the technical side of things, which some people are interested as well. So talking about, again, being at the right time at the right place, I was sitting on a Friday night, and DJ Good Groove came into my room, and he said, like, my partner, DJ Pauli, who was supposed to play with me at the Omen tonight. The Omen, at that time, probably one of the most important techno clubs, definitely in Germany, next to Tresor, maybe, around this time. Maybe even, although in Europe, it was kind of a really mecca for people to go there. And he came in and he was looking at me. He's like, dude, Pauli is sick. Sorry, I asked everyone else uh, like no one has time. Everybody has some booking somewhere. You're a DJ, right? Can you just come in and play the first maybe 2 hours, because I don't want to play the whole night alone, because Omen had also no closing hour. And it was easy. Like, you started at 11 at night. You might as well play for 12 hours or 13 hours if you play the whole night alone, you know. And it was, and I said, like, oh, of course, I'll go and grab my records and I'll be there tonight at 11. And so I walked in and said hi to the managers. I said, like, Good Groove asked me to play the beginning, and he's like, yeah, he told me just go up there and play some music. And then the lighting guy, who was a very important person always in those kind of clubs. The lighting person, never underestimate the lighting person, especially when you're a resident. I always try to have a really good connection with the lighting person. So it kind of like giving me cues when a break is coming, so he could do the lights accordingly. And also the lighting guy was usually a person who was look over the DJ and say, like, like here at 12:30, everybody should be on the dance floor. So you better hurry up now and get the crowd going, you know. And he would give you also, like, if you were new, he would give you a lot of shit as well, you know.
Yeah, but that was the same in the clubs where I played with the lighting guy. And what was back in those days, I don't know if that was the case there, but video was making a small entrance into the clubs. So the lighting guy usually also was in charge of the Laserdisc videos, but then you had to incorporate that in your set. So you always have to talk to him, because there were screens that need to be lowered if there were beamers and stuff like that. So indeed you need to be friends with the lighting guy, but in general, and that's the tip for all the young DJs as well, be humble and be friends with everybody at the club, from the person at the toilet up to the bouncer at the door. Know their names, know what they are doing, and just be respectful to them, because they all are small pieces which make this whole dance scene possible.
Absolutely, be humble. That's a big good advice, is that, yeah. And so at that night I started playing, and I played my kind of music, my kind of techno. People enjoyed it, people were dancing, and when Good Groove showed up around 1, he was like, you know what? Just keep playing a little bit longer, you know? I have the whole rest of the night. I'm happy if I start at 4. And so I ended up playing till 4 in that night, and it was great. And I walked down to the managers, wanted to thank them, and they were looking at me like, we heard you did well. Maybe you can give us your phone number. Pre-mobile phones. And if we have a vacancy, we'll call you again. And I'm like, sure. And already the next following Wednesday, I got a call. Hey, on Friday, DJ Duck is not there, and we need somebody to fill in for him in the beginning. And could you come again? And so I started to be kind of like the substitute for all the nights that somebody was missing.
All right.
That happened quite a bit. And then in November 1995, I actually was on their flyer for the first time. And
that's the same as my path. So I started out in this small club. Then we were living very close to Noordwijk, which is like a city at the sea. But in that time, it was one of the hubs where you go out. There were a lot of discotheques there, etc. And little did I know, but all those discotheques were owned by one single owner. And I just happened to hang out there, and sometimes those DJs played my remixes because they knew I made remixes, and I always had them on a cassette tape in my pocket, so they just played my remixes. And then some of those DJs went sick or needed to go home, and they asked me to play. But because those were all from the same owner, I just could start playing everywhere there, and then just organically grow. So again, like you said, it's a matter of luck. But it's also a matter of be there and be known and be a nice person. Don't be a dick. Don't think, I'm Mr. Big Shot DJ. Just be a nice person, be a likable person. And then people will give you the opportunity, or they won't. Yeah. It's luck.
Create the circumstances to have that luck. You can do that. And at the same time, I started producing more techno, and then I started my first label, my first own label called Fine Audio Recordings. And I released, I think in '96, the first record under my own name. And in the combination of being a resident at the Omen Club, where you automatically where automatically other clubs in other cities of Germany were interested in booking you because they could put Omen in brackets behind the name.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh, we have the DJ from the Omen Club. Additionally to that, I kind of felt like I need to get records out there, but I felt also the natural urge to produce my own records, because when you are standing there playing always other people's records, and you get ideas of what you actually would want to play right now, but that record doesn't exist, then it makes you make that record yourself. And that's kind of how my path was. So I tried to create those records that I wanted to play as well. And it was at a time where when a record went off, it went off worldwide in a way.
And for the none to be asked question, which I'm going to ask anyway, did you play an instrument before you started or really thought about making records?
Nothing.
No, you played your computer. You played the computer.
I cannot read notes. I kind of learned a little bit about harmonies and everything, but I think that's partly, if I had learned instruments when I was younger, I might have not become a DJ, because I wanted to make music. But because I never learned an instrument, that was my way of making music, like mixing music with each other, and then starting like the electronic music that you started in those early days with Atari ST and 909 and whatever. You were teaching yourself in a way. You had these manuals.
I'm so with you on that. I came from a day and age that every family in the Netherlands, when I was young, like 7, 8, needed to have an electronic organ. That was the thing. Every family had an electronic organ, and so I was put on lessons to play an electronic organ. But I was a lazy son of a bitch, which I still am, but I was back then. And I had this teacher who always played the parts that I needed to learn that week, but I could just memorize what he played, and I could even improvise on it, because my hearing was already musical. I didn't know what that meant back then, those days, but I could remember what he played, and I could play it, I could improvise, but I couldn't read a note.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, after 2 years, he stopped playing the parts for that week, which means I had to read notes, and I just pretend that I was reading notes, but I couldn't read a note if my life depended on it. So he stopped playing what was there, and then my parents said, all right, this is a waste of money, we stop putting that man on. So I hear what you say. I didn't play a real instrument either, but I knew what kind of music to make, because I could hear it in my mind, and on an organ I knew where the knobs were, so I could just play it around. And that was the reason why I asked you, because I was already thinking, all right, I think Chris didn't play an instrument either before he started to make music. But just a little detour, Chris. These days, if I talk to a lot of kids, what do you want to be? Then they say to me, I want to be a DJ producer. And you can't make me more angry than saying you want to be a DJ producer, because in my book, those are two entirely different professions. And there are some DJs out there, take Armin for instance, take yourself, who are truly a DJ producer, who can play a DJ set, even on vinyl, but who also can produce original music. I'm just a DJ, I can remix stuff, but making something from scratch that doesn't already exist, maybe I can do it, but that was never my drive, so I never call myself a DJ producer. But how do you look yourself at the term DJ producer? How do you, because I find it to be flattened too much, and just, all right, it's the same as I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a pilot. It is too general for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's two completely, as you say, two different sides, but of the same story kind of thing, of the same metal. So in my case, I would say, the DJing obviously is a whole different craft than sitting in the studio and figuring out machines and trying to make sense of it. The beauty of electronic music was, and that what appealed to me as well, there's no rules. Like there there was nobody who told you it needs to be this, or you first need to learn this in order to do this. You were just sitting there like hitting a button, and oh, this comes out. What happens if I twist this oscillator? What happens if I add this filter? Oh, this is happening, and it's a lot of learning by doing all the time, and it's a lot of time that you invest. Obviously, you invest a lot of time in your DJing as well, finding music, but it is a different craft than being in the studio. But in my case, they complement each other, because I kind of feel that I want to play more music, my idea of music, and therefore I need to produce that idea of music. So for me, the DJing always came kind of first, and the producing the second. But I am really enjoying the production.
The creation part of it.
You're completely on your own. You have your own time frame, and you're undisturbed, and you can dive into creating something, which I still find so incredible still today.
And that's a bit of what I mean. I understand that a lot of producers, great producers, take Calvin Harris for instance, a great producer. He makes great productions, but I don't regard him a DJ.
Yeah.
Because I never seen him play a set that felt organic, that caught the room. He can do his routines, his producer routine, and I understand that he needs to, because as a producer it's hard to make money, and if you can do festivals, big festivals, because you have big hits, then obviously you can make money to make good for the thing that drives you. So nothing bad about that, but the term DJ producers kind of raises hairs with me. I really don't like that term, unless it's earned, like for instance your case, and take David Guetta for instance. David Guetta is a great DJ. Most people think he isn't, but trust me, David Guetta from the early days, he is a good DJ, and he is a good producer. But take Ben Liebrand for instance, he is a great producer. And of course he can play a set, but you never get the feeling that his heart is at that, and that's fine. Then don't try to pretend to be something that you are not, just because it makes you money. Just name it as it is.
Yeah. If it comes organic, then it's a nice thing that happens. Yeah.
Yep. And with you, it for sure went organic. So now we know a little bit about your background, and of course, everything after that is kind of history, and of course we are leaving a lot out, but I have this feeling, Chris, that we can make this a 24-hour show, and we still didn't make it to the point that we finally want to make, which is fine by me, by the way. But hey, there are people watching this back on YouTube, and they still have to go to work, etc. So we have to be careful with that.
Oh, of course.
So let's take it a little bit to the present days. You are known as a DJ who performs on a hybrid setup. And folks, we are going to geek out now, because usually we are talking about DJs with 2 CDJs, much like right here. And then we are talking, hold on, that's me again, or 2 turntables. But Chris here is a different kind of DJ. He is using what is called a hybrid set. And please tell us, Chris, what do we mean if we talk about a hybrid set?
I was always very interested in let's say, interfering with the music that I'm playing and making it different in real time. So for example, when I stopped playing with vinyl, I started playing with Final Scratch, which was basically you were playing MP3s of a computer while using a time-coded vinyl. And this was taken over by Native Instruments. They had the existing Traktor software, so Final Scratch Traktor came together. And since these early days, I've been working closely together with Native Instruments in order to create a software which we have now today, Traktor Pro, that enables you to set loops, that has 4 decks, like that was not the case in the early days, to have 4 decks. And an early machine that first helped me to interfere and remix in live remixing was a Cycloop sampler. You might remember this little machine as well. It was by a company called Red Sound later on. It was a little machine that was detecting the BPMs. It was kind of the first machine, actually, which had an auto detection of BPMs. You were connecting it with an output on your mixing desk. It would receive for example, the headphone signal.
The signal,
the machine, and then you had 6 buttons. You could loop a 1-bar loop, 2-bar loop, 2 4-bar loops, an 8-bar loop, and a 16-bar loop. And it would detect the tempo that you were playing with your records. You hit a 4-bar loop, and this loop would just indefinitely play. Obviously,
was that already digitally, or was it still analog?
No, that was digitally sampled, and that was probably around 2003 when this machine came on.
All right.
And it didn't sound all that great, but it gave you the loop on another channel, so you could basically play a new record on that channel where you looped it from, still keep the loop running. And my idea of DJing was always, I tried to create a sound wall or a sound carpet without interruptions, unless you want to have the interruptions. I wanted to create, and that's where DJ Pierre comes in again. I wanted to create mixes that would so seamlessly work with each other that you would not really understand where the beginning or the end of the last record was, and vice versa. And having this with 2 records was already nice, but having a loop running on top of it was incredible then. And so it was all about, let's say, making your DJ sets even more unique. And when TRAKTOR became a thing with the 4 decks and Maschine was released, I started to add Maschine to my setup in order to add even more percussions, more hi-hat, snare, clap loops, percussion loops, or whatever I wanted to do in what I felt in this moment. Very improvisational, unplanned, in a way that you could even sort of add live elements to whatever was playing, and looping records on top of each other. So you had indefinite.
Let's take this a few steps back, because I know that a lot of guys who are watching now are Serato guys, because face it, my software is big in the Serato scene, not so much in the TRAKTOR scene, but I'm a TRAKTOR user myself, so I know exactly. First of all, folks, TRAKTOR is a DJ software, and that was indeed one of the first 4-channel DJ softwares that could just play, right? And I'm with TRAKTOR from version 1 as well. My first controller was a Vestex VCI 100 controller. I've been all to that. Maschine, on the other hand, is a different beast. And could you very quickly explain to the viewers what Maschine is? It's a Native Instruments product. It's from the same makers as TRAKTOR, but what is it?
I can actually show you as well if I use my
that would be great. Let me give you the screen. Hold on.
Fancy little other camera here. Let me see how I do this. All right, I'll try to not move too fast. So this is
perfect.
This is the Native Instruments Maschine. And for those people who might remember old Akai MPCs, it's kind of an Akai MPC, I would say, is kind of the original drum machine in a way. You would put samples on each pad. You have 16 pads, and you can put any sample on each pad. And in this case, you have also, sorry, shaking a little bit here.
You were extremely sharp, by the way.
8 banks, and you have, this is Maschine MK3, so it's basically already the 3rd version of revision version. And I've been using Maschine since the first Maschine came out, the first one. And basically it is already a whole studio in itself. It has so much potential. Actually, the way I'm using it is maybe 10%. I'm only using probably 10% of its all potential that it has. And you can use it in a million different ways. The way I use it is I have, on each bank, I have different sounds. For example, on bank A, here, bank A,
yep.
B, C, D, I have on A a lot of different snares. On bank B, I have a lot of different claps. Here's a lot of different hi-hats, 16 different hi-hats, so to speak. 16 different rides, 16 different cymbals, 16 different toms, 16 different percussions, and this bank is reserved for effects. And so whatever I feel like, I basically choose the bank, and I play some clap patterns. I play that I layer on top.
And the beauty of this all is that it is synchronized with what is going on in Traktor.
Exactly.
And is that synchronized over MIDI, or is that a very special proprietary way of it is synchronized?
Hold on, I go back to my so you can see me, so I don't have to hold the camera all the time. you saw the Maschine now. It is in the early days. I was using a sound card that had MIDI. I was using Firefaces.
Firewire.
RME Firefaces.
Yeah.
And you would essentially use MIDI in order to sync those things up. These days are luckily over, because it was a hell of like going fluctuating. So Ableton Live started to have the link function. There's a link function with Ableton, and Native Instruments integrated this link function. It's a spot-on function. It basically you can link. It doesn't need to have a master or a slave anymore.
No, you just follow the link.
You know, it's linked up. So in this case, how I'm playing these days is I have Traktor running on the computer, and I have the Maschine as a standalone, not as a plugin in a sequencer or in a DAW. I use the Maschine software as a standalone. So in Maschine, I hit the link button, and I can even show you. Hold on, how can I show you this? Camera again. Hold on. Here we go. So the cable is not that long, but if I show you, here is the Maschine, and then oh, this is not the Maschine. I can't get any closer, but if you see my mouse, there's this little thing which we call click link, and then
Yep, I can see it. Yeah, at the left top corner.
Yeah. Then I go back to Traktor. Here's the same link little button where my mouse is, and I hit this, and then, for example, you see the tempo there. When I change the tempo now here,
it'll change with it. Yeah.
Then the tempo changes as well. I'm sorry, I can't get any closer to it, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
You might see the tempo changes there too. So it is linked in a way that that is super tight. And I basically route the outputs of Maschine to a channel, and then you have the 4 decks to 4 individual channels, and whatever I play on the Maschine, and if I play it right in time, so to speak, then it works well with the music.
It all syncs up. So guys on Serato who are very happy to have scratch pads these days. This is scratch pad, but then in the early 2000s it already had that capability. It just evolved more, but the capabilities were already there very early on, and that is the fact with a lot of Traktor stuff, that it already had it way before it became big. For instance, beatport integration. In the early Traktors, you could buy tracks from beatport straight from Traktor. You could just pull it in.
Yeah.
And now it is a thing, obviously, but we had it already. But I obviously know how that stuff works, but I wanted to make sure that the Serato guys also know that, all right, this is already possible for a very long time with Traktor, and there are some amazing things that you can do with it, because Chris is a living proof of that. So what else is we've got the Maschine. Then what else do you have in your current setup, Chris? I see another Native Instruments controller there.
No, this is an Allen and Heath controller essentially. It's
right.
It is the K2 from Allen and Heath.
Yep.
And what I've been using those controllers for a long time. I never really, even though I work very closely together with Native Instruments and they're all good friends, I never really got into the Traktor controllers from Native Instruments. And the Stone K2 controllers from Allen Heath, which is essentially exactly what I needed. Since I have 4 decks, I can quickly explain that. I have 2 of those controllers, one on the right, one on the left, next to the mixer here. And essentially, this side of the controller is one deck. So this is deck D, this is deck B.
All right.
The equivalent, I'm controlling deck D and deck B with dedicated controllers on my K2. So I have 4 times for 4 decks on 2 controllers, which share basically 2 decks on each side. And it makes sense visually to me because on the right hand side is the controller on the right side of the mixer, and on the left hand side is the controller for the left side of the
and then the up faders. There is one for the channel up fader and one for the pitch. Or why do you want? Why do we want to have 2 up faders per channel?
The thing is that these podies here are used. Hold on, I'll go a little bit in. Oh, by the way, this is a picture from my spin club in the early days in Gießen.
Ah, right.
By the way,
it's hard to see there.
I know it's hard to see, and it's really, I mean, it's a picture from '92 or something, or 93, but it kind of it captures the vibe which was happening there. So going back here, I am on Traktor. So when I use those encoders, I basically go in my playlists. You see that?
Yes, I see that. Yes, so the encoders are for the playlist.
Exactly, and the right encoder is for in the playlist. I can choose the tracks.
Yes, so one is for the playlist and the other is for the track selection.
Exactly, and those are push encoders. So if I push this button on the track that I've selected, I'm loading it into deck D. Bam.
And if you push the left one, you load in B.
And if I choose something on the left one, I'll just randomly choose something here. Now here. And then when I push this button, it loads it into this deck.
Ah, great. So you now I was talking about the up faders. So you have 2 up faders.
Those faders. This is basically the dry wet of any effect that I'm using.
All right, this is dry wet you use it for.
Dry wet of any effect, and this is the time of the equivalent of the effect. I'm using mostly different kinds of delay effects. So let's say I'll have 1/4 of a delay would be around here. I don't really know, it's always good not to know. I choose the effects with these buttons here. There's different effects here. This is a gator, this is a different delay effect, this is a ping pong delay. And then when I choose them, I can activate them with this button or deactivate them. Or I can just keep this button pushed, and then it's automatically activated. As you can see, if I push this button, this lights up, and then I can basically go dry and wet of the effect on the stack which I'm choosing.
So these are by no way mixer up faders. It's the dry wet, and it's the amount of or the timing of the effects you are using that you control with that. So basically, it's the effect control box and the track loader,
including those buttons and those knobs here, which basically are parameters and mapped to certain other effect types, where I basically add grain or add saturation or something like this, And the top encoders are essentially, when you look at it, if I hit the top encoder, I deactivate a loop.
Yes.
You see it on deck D. If I hit this button again, I activate a 4-bar loop. It's set to 4 bars. If I turn the right knob, this one, then I make the loop longer, or I make the loop shorter.
All right, just as some of the loop encoders do.
And
Uh,
the left one, I'm moving the loop. I can move the loop forward and backward and wherever I need to have the loop. And as you can see, I have no cue points.
we are going to talk about that, my friend,
That's
because you are going to get cue points. I can guarantee you.
that is essentially the setup of my controller, and this side.
And then
and there,
I understand. And then you duplicate it for the A and the C channel, same setup. And then all audio is routed to the mixer. And I think I spot a V10 there, a Pioneer V10.
And you spot this one too?
Yes, I spotted that one, but that was hidden away. So I was thinking, all right, he's no longer with.
Plus, for me, I'm using it as my Maschine stand right now. But
Yeah.
I have to say, the Model 1 is kind of this Model 1 here is my main mixer for my studio setup. So all my machines, like this 909 here, this Boutique 101, which I have, another Maschine here, which is in the studio setup, integrated, a Maschine Plus, my old 303s here. I have an analog rhythm here from Electron, some effect boxes. And this beautiful machine is the MC707 from Roland, which I can recommend to anyone, which is a...
Hold on. Yes, now it's yes, now it's there.
Which
Oh, that looks great. That looks
studio
great.
itself. Please mind my cable stuff here, which
Yeah,
is...
that's all right.
So, so basically the Model 1 functions as my main, where everything comes together when I record stuff live. You know, I have the Eventide H8000 as an effects processor and external. I have another Antelope Audio sound card, which I feed all the analog equipment in order to AD it from analog to digital. And yeah, that's kind of how this little studio setup works. And I have this pretty, when we're Faderport 16 here by PreSonus, which is amazing for mixing stuff and also obviously for producing.
Well, what is your DAW of choice usually?
It's 90% of all time it's Ableton Live, and
I could imagine, because that has that real Traktor feel to it.
Yeah, but I used to start out with Logic. After we ditched Notator in the back in the days, Logic was the first version.
Yeah, was the first one. That was the only choice you had.
True.
You didn't use things. I don't know. Were you on Apple already, or were you still on the ST and moved to Windows in between?
No, we were. You were able to use Logic on Apple from the very first version already.
Yeah, that's correct. But before Logic became a thing, there was something else. And I used that stuff. Let me get the boxes if you're interested. Hold on.
Of course, Cubase or something like this.
No, it was software. It was software, but it was really old. Let me get it.
Yes. Shaky pictures. I'll tell you in a bit more about why I'm using the setup that I'm using right now. Just wait.
All right, that was this. And I think it is the origin of Logic, but I'm not sure. It's called Deck 2 by OSC.
Oh my God.
And it is on floppy disks, obviously. And it gave you the possibility to combine real audio with MIDI. We are talking 1990, I think. 1992. So
wow. I've never seen this. What company was this by?
OSC was the name. OSC was the name. Deck 2. This is the audio workstation software for Macintosh, and it run on I think 7.5 was the minimum Mac OS that was required. So this is way before OS X. I was always an Apple guy. After Commodore, Apple came in, and this is also fun. This is Sound Edit 16. I was actually on the first Sound Edit, but originally Apple wasn't allowed to make music because Apple had made a deal with Apple Music the company that produced the Beatles, for instance,
Yeah.
that they could maintain the Apple brand name if it was only about computers.
Yes.
That was the deal they had. But Steve Jobs thought, bullshit that I want to make, because Steve Jobs was a great music lover. So in, I think, System 8.1, there became an alert noise, an alert sound that sounded a little bit like a chord, and that was called Sashumi. So that was kind of a Japanese vibe had that to it. And you still know that sound. It's a little chord-like sound if you make an error. But that Sashumi wasn't Japanese at all. It was just Steve Jobs mastering So Sue Me, and that was directed to Apple Music. But Mac had really nice digital audio converters already in it, but they were limited by the operating system to 8 bits. You could only use them in 8-bit. You could not do 16-bit. And that was also obviously because of what the deal they struck with Apple Music, the music company, the label Apple the label.
Incredible.
And then came around these guys. They already had an audio processor that worked mono in 8-bit. And this is before Logic even. And Apple added 16 bits to QuickTime, the multimedia component of macOS. And this was one of the first that could do 16-bit audio on Apple. It's also still on floppy drives. Really great stuff. This didn't have any MIDI. The other one I showed you, OSC, could do MIDI and combine MIDI. And I think, but I'm not sure, that has evolved into Logic. But I'm not entirely sure about that. But DEC 2 was the thing to use on Apple in the very, very, very early 90s. And obviously you came to the party later on, because I think that back in those days Logic was already taken over by Apple, or they were in the process, because it's now owned by Apple, of course.
I think Logic was taken over by Apple in 2004 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Logic used to be its own company.
Yeah, it used to be its very own brand. So that's again old man tales. We are good at old man tales, Chris. We should make a show of it. So we have seen Chris, his current hybrid setup. And one notable thing that is at the left of that hybrid setup, which we didn't speak about, I saw a Pioneer mixer. I saw some CDJ 3000s.
Before I show you, let me explain to you a little bit.
Sure.
Ask your question first, Peter, please.
No, go ahead. Explain.
Because a lot of people have asked me, or I hear that a lot, like, why did you ditch the Model 1 mixer? The Model 1 mixer was my go-to mixer in the past, I think, 7 years. I helped with a lot of DJ friends, and especially led by Richie Horton, to create this mixer and to get ideas together for this mixer. I think we started that process back in 2011, 2012, when we all threw together ideas of how the next DJ mixer is supposed to be like. And up to that point, I was working mostly with the Zone 96, Zone 94, kill me, I forgot the number. But I was an Allen Heath person. I've never used Pioneer equipment, never ever. I've never used CDJs, for a matter of fact, in my whole life, because I went from playing from vinyl, I went over to Final Scratch, and then to Traktor. I've never used CDJs, so I never really learned how to use CDJs. And I remember when DJs were playing before me who used CDJs, I needed to ask my tour manager to turn the CDJs off, because I would not even know where to turn them off or what to do with them. And obviously the Model 1 is a beautiful and extremely amazing mixer. The thing with the Model 1 is that you have to carry your own sound card with you when you travel and you're using Traktor. And since I'm a very heavy sound fanatic, I was always traveling with an Antelope Audio sound card, which is quite a high-end sound card. And it's quite heavy, quite big. So during the pandemic, it dawned to me that travel won't be much easier in the coming years to come. you know. And it was already very hard to travel with because you would not want to check this stuff in. So I have this as hand luggage. I had a hand luggage piece which weighed 22, 23 kilos. So when I was checking into airports and they were like wanted to weigh my hand luggage, I would be like, you know what? You don't want to weigh my hand luggage. Like you just like, you just pretend you never asked this question, and I promise you nothing's going to happen with this, you know, because I had to convince them that I could never check this in. So I knew this is going to be difficult, and I was thinking of how am I going to solve this issue? How am I going to solve this future issue? With everything's going to be more complicated with traveling, but yet I don't want to have any compromises in the way I play. I admire DJs with his USB sticks going to clubs and just start playing. I literally admire them. I could never do this. I was thinking, it's like, maybe I should try. So during the pandemic, thank you, universe, Pioneer suddenly released this mixer, the V10, and I can openly say the V10 mixer is very heavily based on the Model 1 mixer.
It's for your genre. It's built for you. It's for the EDM, techno, trance, electro DJ, like the Model 1. It is really built for that genre.
Oh, it is insane. When I got my hands, I basically got in touch with Pioneer. I was like, Pioneer, I'm sorry, you never heard of me. I've never used your product. I really, honestly, I even hated how your products were sounding. And I hated the effects, the same effects that everybody using. That's why I used something different. But this V10 mixer looks extremely intriguing. Can I try it? So they gave me one to test. And I sat down and I made analyzers of the sound, and I played with this mixer around, and I felt like, wow, it almost feels like somebody created that mixer who was looking at me playing all the time, because it literally has everything that I need in this mixer, and I have to say it sounds absolutely incredible, amazing.
Well,
They've done an absolutely incredible job. It has two built-in sound cards. An A and a B slot, which is incredible because now I don't need to carry around my sound card. I love the Model 1. It was a different way of mixing because you had, instead of EQs, you had filters to mix with.
Yep.
And it's an amazing way of mixing music as well. But the V10, we're going back to having a 4-band EQ on each channel, but additionally you have the filter version underneath, and you can choose a high pass or a low pass filter, and essentially you kind of have the same thing like the Model 1. It's a pure digital mixer, it is, but this is digital at its highest, at its best. Like, you cannot literally hear it's digital anymore. It's so good, it's so clean.
It sure is, but I hear what you say, because in the past the DJM mixers were not that best sound quality, but I've got a 900 Nexus 2 in front of me, which is my audio hub, and I choose that because the excellent sound it produces. It sounds so much better than any other DJM, and I can only imagine, I've played with the V10, that it sounds even better.
Yeah.
But
I don't know
Chris,
your mixer, so it might be the same thing, but again, I'm not sponsored by Pioneer. I'm not saying this because I get paid from them. Absolutely not.
Same here. I'm like the Switzerland of DJ gear and DJ software, not paid by anybody. I always speak my mind, and some manufacturers hate me for that. Yeah. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah. But the feel of the mixer is great, and it literally convinced me, and that was a hard thing to convince me to let go of the Model 1. Because I love the Model 1, and to let go of it was like, this mixer really has to have something. And let me.
But then, as another question, have you never tried the 96 or even the DB4? I've got the DB4 set up here, and that is a real zone and a heat mixer as well.
The DB4 I have too, as well, but I never really got my head around it, to be honest. For some, And
That
I
it was. I always tell this in the stream. It was the first mixer ever in my 40-year career that I had to read the manual for to get audio out of it,
yeah.
because it has those weird switches that you can assign each channel to a different set of audio inputs. So it really takes some time, but
Yeah.
once you master it, it's such a beautiful mixer.
Yeah, but
But
it was never really mine because I need more than 4 channels.
yep, and then there you got it.
And
And
that's what we have in Model 1.
but you didn't choose the V10 with the long up faders. You choose the one with the shorter up faders and then with the crossfader under it.
This is by accident. I really want the one with the longer faders because I never use a crossfader. And I would,
No, that's why I'm asking. I can imagine
I would love to have the long fader version. And maybe one day I can replace it with a long fader version. But when I got this, I didn't even know that there is a one long fader version.
that was later. The long fader was a few months later and came out of nothing because nobody was expecting it.
Yeah.
But I've got this Datec GPM8 in the back of me, which is a pure analog mixer back from the mid 80s, and that also got long faders. And I can imagine that, especially in the techno and electro scene, you want long faders so you can very precisely put the mix together. I can imagine that you need that.
Long faders like this here. These are long.
Yep. Long faders all to the end.
Exactly.
And I
so into the sound, you just like little movements. And this is why I hope one day I'm gonna have the long fader version. And when I go to gigs, and we are requesting the V10 obviously now at gigs.
all right, on your tech rider is now the V10 and preferably long fader.
Yeah, but I haven't gotten the long fader yet once because this is so rare. Actually, it's quite a rare mixer for rental companies to have or clubs to have. And I never used the crossfader, so I really would love to have a long fader. Pioneer, if you're listening.
I know some people are tuning in this stream later on, so I think we should be able to work something out there, Chris. And otherwise, I will put their attention on it. Give the man long faders, yes. And then we've got the CDJ 3000s. What kind of role do they play in your current setup?
Yes. So I felt like I can show you the CDJ 3000s here a little bit because I'm going to move back to me as my arm gets heavy holding this camera. Just a quick one because why I'm using the setup that I'm using now, and it's kind of like that's. Are you calling it hybrid setup because of the CDJs now? Because this is how I got into Rekordbox, and then we can lead over into your new software.
We will do that later on. No, the hybrid setup. What we mean by that is that you use elements from just music machines like the Maschine you are using, and elements from regular DJing like TRAKTOR, Serato, Rekordbox, whatever you want to use, but that you are not relying strictly on 2 audio sources or 4, but also want to put your own musical input on it over Ableton Link. I even know DJs that can DJ on strictly Ableton. They just make lists of it and then just DJ using only Ableton. I never mastered that very well, but again, I'm not the producer.
That's the beauty of it. Anything is possible, right? The main thing is there's sound coming out of the speakers, and the sound should make sense in a way, and get people dancing in the best case. So the thing was that with all the experience that I've always done since the early 2000s, Final Scratch and all these things, one main concern was always what happens if something crashes. You never want to be in the situation that your equipment crashes and you can't play music anymore. So in the early days of Final Scratch, obviously I had a record case still with me. So if my computer would break, I would just throw on a record and continue to play. Or on the third turntable, I would always have a vinyl record, and the other 2 turntables came from Final Scratch. So if Final Scratch was crashing for some reason, it was too humid in the club, there was a million reasons why things could not work, because you were working with beta versions that weren't really tested. You were like upgrading something 1 hour before you go into the club. And so you always needed to what I call an exit strategy. Like never rely on only one sound source. Don't make that mistake. So in the very early days when I started to work with Traktor and with Maschine, I actually played with two computers. I had two RME sound cards, completely separate, two separate systems. And this is what we talked about earlier. And I connected the two RMEs via MIDI. So the one was the master, the Traktor in that case, and then I had the Ableton computer where Maschine was a plugin running as the slave. And this how I basically synced the two machines with each other. If my Traktor computer broke, I could continue to play with my Ableton Live computer and with Maschine on there, and I had music on there as well. If the other computer broke, I would just continue to play on the Traktor computer. So I would always have an exit strategy. It's like it would never happen that both computers break. That would never happen. I mean, it literally, if you were taking good care of your equipment, especially if you're working like with your own computers and everything, you take good care of your computers, you take good care of your installations, you don't have a messy computer, you have enough disk space, you have enough RAM, you clean your computer, you be careful that there's no liquid damage with it, then a computer is a pretty safe thing, even in a club environment. And I have to tell you, my own experience, I only had maybe in the whole last 20 years, maybe 10 to 15 crashes while I was playing.
But then again, you were using MacBooks, Apple products, running Apple system, running Traktor, which is a very robust, which is really a stable product if you use it correctly. Nowadays things are a little bit more sketchy because with an Apple computer you are by definition almost forced to use a USB hub. USB hub are the major source of troubles, so that is always kind of sketchy, but also good information about having a backup, because to be honest, the DJ conversion utility started out because I used Algorithms DJ on my iPhone and on my iPad as a backup system, and I wanted to have my Traktor information in DJ, and that is where the original DJ conversion, it was just an in-house tool I wrote because I wanted to be able to play Algorithms DJ, and that's where that originated from. But then we come to the point. Chris, are you still with me?
I'm still with you. I'm just showing you exactly what you were just talking about, like the problem with
the USB hub.
USB hubs and the computers. This is why I'm still using a MacBook Air from 2017.
It got the regular USBs. Same here. I've got a MacBook Air. The computer Yvette is on moderating right now. Is a MacBook Air from 2018 with the good old USB-A ports on it, and those are fast enough. That's fine.
Exactly. This is fast enough. They're completely fine still, these computers. And the M1 chip, that's another issue that we are having. The M1 chip, the Allen & Heath K2 controllers are yet not working with an M1 chip on Apple.
Don't get me started about the M1 chip. I can tell you stories. It's a great thing, but I don't need an iPad on my Apple computer. I need to have a Mac OS on my Apple computer and not an iPad. But I understand why they are doing it, and that's typically Apple.
Yeah.
Love the product, hate the company, and especially for the forced decision or the design decisions they always force upon their users. So yeah, that's why us DJs always are way behind the newest technology, because why would we? We don't need it. The speed is good, reliability, and that MacBook Air you are running right there runs ages on a single battery charge. There is nothing that can beat that MacBook Air when it comes to how long it can do with the battery charge. So I'm completely with you again.
Absolutely a beautiful machine, and I have always two of the same computers. So when I travel and I have longer trips.
And what Mac OS are you running there, Chris?
High Sierra.
I could have guessed. All right, Mojave is my production machine of choice.
Okay.
But you will be amazed about how many artists are still running High Sierra, which is a problem for me. Not because of my tools. My tools work fine on High Sierra. No, the problem is that when there is a problem and an artist needs my help, I use TeamViewer. TeamViewer is a program that you can share screens and we can talk to each other, and I can just see in his stuff what is going wrong and then explain what is going wrong. TeamViewer doesn't work on High Sierra anymore. And there is no update, there is no possibility. It works on older systems. I can run TeamViewer on El Capitan or on Sierra, but High Sierra, TeamViewer will say, you are running a too old Mac OS that is no longer supported. And it will not work. So that is really a problem for me. But otherwise, I can imagine that you want to run on High Sierra. It is one of the real, you always have those tank operating systems in each release. And I consider Mojave to be the tank OS. It's still compatible with everything out there. And with the latest stuff, High Sierra is, like I said, with TeamViewer, is getting a little bit sketchy. But then again, if it's working, why update?
Yeah,
please.
It works for me, so I kept it there.
And please, macOS users, if you are watching this, switch off your automatic update right now, as we speak. Yes. Because Monterey is just around the corner and you don't want to wake up the day before you have your gig and your macOS decided to update to Monterey and all of a sudden your Serato, Traktor, sound cards, whatever, are not working anymore. So please, please, please switch off automatic software update, so at least it will ask you to update. Don't make that automatic, because otherwise you have a problem.
That is a very important tip. Listen to him. It's really
good. we will frame this section of the stream and just talk. And then we've got the CDJs in your setup are basically your fallback right now. They are your backup.
Let's put it this way. I always wanted to have an exit strategy, but when I was working with the Model 1 and I switched to only working with one computer, with my Antelope Audio sound card, this system and setup was so incredibly stable. I've worked with this for like 5 or 6 years and never had a single issue, nowhere, not a glitch in my set, and the best possible sound. So I got really, really, let's say, confident with the setup. And I never even thought about having an exit strategy. At some point, I started to feel like maybe I'm getting a little bit too cocky about this, you know, and you know, it's like I'm gonna have this big crash at some point in front of 5,000 people, and I'm standing there like, oh my God, I should have done an exit strategy. And this was before the pandemic, when I started to think like maybe I should just have the promoter or the people who run the party to put a CDJ next to me. So I started to get into CDJ a little bit, and I started to kind of find out how Rekordbox works and to get some music on a USB stick and have the USB stick standing next to the Model 1 just to feel better about it, you know, just to feel like if something crashes, I can just hit play and some music is running. So then the pandemic comes and this V10 mixer comes out, and then I love this V10 mixer, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is so amazing. And if I have the V10 mixer now, obviously the club or the party will also have CDJs standing there. And maybe I want to learn more. I want to, you know, you never stop learning, and I want to learn more. And I was like, now is the time in the pandemic that I want to learn how to work with CDJs. And so you're more flexible. Maybe I can go to a party without my computer and I just have a USB stick with me, and I can just spontaneously play or play back to back with someone. And I want to be more flexible in my setup. So I got those CDJs and I started to learn them. And then I realized this is a perfect exit strategy as well. I always have those two CDJs to my left then. To my right is my Maschine, to my left are the two CDJs, the controllers left and right of the mixer. And if something happens with my Traktor, because my MacBook Air from 2017 is not getting younger, but then I just continue to play on the CDJs because I know it. So during the pandemic, I taught myself how to play on CDJs, and then I taught myself on getting my playlists into Rekordbox, and that's where you came in.
Yeah, that's right. But we are not through with the CDJs yet. But because let me take a few steps back. So I was writing this software, and I was still loving my Traktor, but I was faced with one problem. because I am that DJ who likes either vinyl or big jog wheels. And for my beloved Traktor, after the Pioneer DDJ T1, which is a very old controller for a Traktor, there were no big jog wheel controllers for Traktor anymore. So I decided, all right, what the heck, I just buy a CDJ Nexus 2 kit and use it only as a hit kit as a controller for my Traktor. And Pioneer still hates me for that because I just speak the only reason why I had the Nexus 2 kit in front of me was because I needed a hit controller with big jog wheels. Yeah. Then the CDJ 3000 came out and I thought, well, what the heck, I just need a controller, and the Nexus 2 is just as good a controller as anything. But then I felt the jog wheel of the CDJ 3000 and I was sold. That jog wheel is so smooth. That jog wheel moves so incredibly smooth. So my question to you is, Chris, have you tried these in the hit mode in Traktor? Because we have hit support for these babies in Traktor. We can control Traktor from CDJ Nexus 3000. And I can imagine that you can do new tricks with it and you don't have to change anything in your set. You still can use your controllers, your Allen Heat controllers for the effects and how you want to use them. The only thing you use them for is maybe to put those cue points finally at work and to just make corrections which you otherwise, because are you usually running on sync or are you just, do you have quantize on Traktor? How do you get it all lined up track-wise?
Well, first of all, what you're just saying that I use the CDJs to control Traktor is kind of probably my next step that I want to investigate and look into, because I see all those points and I see all those beautiful cue buttons underneath the big screen of the CDJ 3000. So how I'm working right now, and that was another thing that I kind of missed from the early DJ days, I wanted to have a little bit of mixing going on again, you know? And so I know obviously what tempo I'm playing on the Traktor. So I'm kind of going in the same tempo, but I'm kind of mixing. So I mix the CDJs with the Traktor set that I'm playing. I have the same playlists on the CDJs as I have on Traktor.
All right, you just good old use the pitch fader to get them in sync. Use your headset, get them in sync, and just blend them as we always did in the good old days, which is perfect.
The humanizing factor again, and it's just like it's not always spot on, you know. I always try to explain this to native instruments that they should maybe integrate a sort of a humanizing factor in their Traktor, which in the practice you could maybe even put the sensitivity in, so the tracks would have a little bit of fluctuation in itself and would not completely spot on like kick drum on kick drum, just like this little slightly fluctuation, which gives this a more of an organic feel that you used to have with your vinyls.
Yeah, and then you get into the problem that Traktor doesn't have a flexible beat grid, and for that to work, you need a dynamic beat grid, and then you can just jazz it up a little bit, and you can just have a preference which say how much jazzing you want into the set, let's say from 0.001% to 0.5% and everything in between there, and then it will take care. If you hit sync and if you sync it up automatically, it will still fluctuate back and forth, but will still quantize, so the first one-on-one will still be spot on and you don't mess up your phrasing, but it gives that more natural flow that like a real band is playing the music instead of something that is strictly electronic, which is a good idea, I think.
Can I excuse myself for a second because I really need to use the restroom?
Sure. Go ahead. I just tell the people how this all happened, because you must understand I work with a lot of big name artists, with a lot of DJs together, and I usually don't name drop. I don't say I worked this week with him or her or whatever, simply because out of discretion I don't want to put that out unless the artist has given it. And often if I help those artists out, then I ask them, I am doing this AMA live stream, would you care to join me one time in the stream, just to talk about what you do. And the usual answer is, sure, we want to do that, we get back to you later. And most of them forget about it, because I'm like the guy who makes a washing machine. If it works, and nobody thinks about it. But if it's broken, then they know where you are at. So Chris was going from Traktor to Rekordbox. He reached out to me. I helped him out. I reached out back to him. And Chris wrote me back, sure, whatever, be in touch with you later. And that answer I had often. Be in touch with you later. But to my surprise, just a day later, I get an email from Chris. And Chris is explaining to me, listen, I have that and that and that and that date that I am available. Let me know when we can do this. And that really shows what kind of man Chris is. He is just a man of his word. And I really can appreciate that kind of sticking to your word. That is not very often with artists like him, that they really stick to those words unless they have to, because they either have a problem that needs to be solved, or there is a huge amount of money involved. And just doing this for the love of the craft, that is a great thing. So Chris, I was just saying that I was so amazed that you wrote to me, yeah, sure, I want to be a guest in your show. And that I get that answer a lot from very big DJs. And then you never hear from them again until they have a problem. But you said that to me, and the next day you sent me that email, all right, these are the dates that I'm available, let me know what will suit you. That really blew my mind. And then again, in the contact with your team as well, they immediately respond. If you ask them something, you get immediately a response, so we all know where we are at. And that is so seldom in this industry, that I really want to have that spoken out, so people know that's something special, at least for small guys like me.
Oh, that's really nice that you're saying it. I'm going to pass this on to my team. That's a really amazing team, by the way.
Yeah. I can tell they are. I can tell you picked them very carefully and selected them and just grew a family very carefully together, because that's the only way you can work like this for the long run, not for the short run, but sure for the long run. All right, Chris, we can take a jump, and I can show you some tricks when you go from Traktor to Rekordbox. I think we need to take it a few little steps back. Let me take up the screen there. My screen is, always have to see under which button I did. There it is. There you see yourself. And let me, now you can wave into infinity, but that was temporary because now we are here. First of all, you were asking me, you have these two sets of cues, hot cues and memory cues. And of course, everybody knows what a hot cue is, but indeed it can be confusing, especially if you come from Traktor, where we only have 8 pads, and where those 8 pads can be either a hot cue or a loop. Why do you have hot cues and memory cues, and why are those different, and why doesn't that add up? So I have here a Traktor collection, and let me put a track in it. Let's take a random track, why not? Not my personal taste, just random tracks. All right. I don't want that to happen. Now, with a hot cue, there is a certain way it functions. And the hot cue, you can tell it by right here that we are in the hot cue section right now. A hot cue is the closest thing to a hot cue on Traktor, which means if you play it, it will play. And as long as you hold it, it will run. Now, this is the hot cue in Rekordbox. However, on a CDJ, this is not how it works. On a CDJ, it works like this, and then I have to change the preference, which I can always hardly find. Let's see, under the others, not there, not there, not there. Where is my hot cue behavior? Oh, you can see that this is already confusing because I have to find it, and I really want to find it right now. Because the thing is that a hot cue on a CDJ will always make a track play. And that is something that really blew me away when I made my move. Let's see, why can I find it there? From Rekordbox. I really can't find it that far. Let's see on the controller if I can see it right there, but I cannot find it very others. I know it was always on others. No, I cannot find it very quick. But on a CDJ, if you play the hot cue like this, it will start playing. So we are used to, you let it go, and it will move back to where the hot cue was set and the audio will stop. Not on a CDJ. And then you've got memory cues. And memory cues are really an old system. And a problem with the memory cue is you can only apply it to a paused track. So if a track is not playing, and then you have a very arcane way of setting a memory cue, because first I have to say that this is the cue that I want to set, and then I can press memory, and that is because I'm doing this in preparation mode. And then you can see right here that there is a thingy added, and this is a memory cue. Now that memory cue can only be used for one thing, that is loading it up as a starting point. When a track is playing, memory cues become useless, because if I play it right now and I press memory cue, then it just goes back and it stops. So that is not something you want to do. You use memory cues to load track. Now there is one unique kind of memory cue, and now we are going to the loop part. Let's make a loop right here, and let's send that loop. I don't have to press the cue button. Don't ask me why. I can press straight memory right here, and then it creates a loop, an orange loop. And that loop I can trigger if the track is paused, and then I can play it. However, if the track is playing, disarm the loop. Where am I there? And I play the track and I click the loop. Nothing happens, as you can see. The only thing that happens is that it goes from red to orange. A red loop, like this, you see, red, means that it will arm the moment the playback head moves into the loop section. And that is called an active loop. And this is, Chris, what you asked me about. This is in the past how we met, basically. Yeah. You were asking me, how can I activate the loop before using it? The only possibility is using in the memory cues, not in the hot cues, a saved loop, the red loop. And how does that work? Well, let me show it. Let me deactivate it. And if I play the track right now without doing anything, because it is red, it will arm, you see it right there, arming the moment the playback head enters the loop.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. By the way, this is only possible for one loop in a track. So if I have multiple loops saved, let me show that as well. Turn that off. Let's go there. Let's place an extra loop there. The moment I make the second loop orange or red, you see that the other one became orange. So you can only have one active saved loop. On CDJs, this is the only thing that will work. One single active memory loop. However, if you use Rekordbox in controller mode, lo and behold, then we can say, all right, I want to make this active as well. You see that? Now, this is a hot cue and this is active. I think it's a Rekordbox bug that this is possible, but it is possible. By the way, that will disappear if you go from performance to export mode. Let's switch back. Take a little bit of time. There we are. And we go to the hot cue section. There you see that it's orange, while in performance mode, it is red as an active loop.
That must be an obvious bug. Yeah.
This is so annoying that this bug is there, because Chris and I come from Traktor. Let me first have a quick look how this works in Traktor. Because if we are in Traktor, there are some tracks there, why not? I really don't know. We take like something that I'm a little bit more familiar with. This got something. In Traktor, and I have to switch my audio part because otherwise I'm hearing.
Maybe I can quickly chime in, because this was the reason why I asked you this question. Like the track you just loaded into Traktor looks kind of the tracks. I mean, I do have various cue points. I do have cue points here and there, but they're just kind of like for me to visually see where something is happening. What I have usually at the end of the track, I usually choose a 4 to 8 bar loop, which is kind of a very, let's say, very instrumental part. And
you are going to love what I'm going to show you in a moment. You are really going to be so happy with what I'm going to show you in a moment.
So this is what I have with all my tracks. I basically have a load marker in the beginning where I want to load the track, and load loop play is one of the functions that I'm always using. And then at the end of the track, I have a loop. And in Traktor, there is no such a thing as a what do you call it? Active loop, mandatory loop. You have to hit the active button, in order to so the next loop that is coming up in the track will automatically engaged and will always run. I have at the end of every track one or a couple of loops, and then I decide while I'm playing, okay, I hit active now, so I don't have to worry about this track running out. It will catch the last loop, and it will loop there forever. And this is what I want. And when I first started to turn my playlists into Rekordbox playlists, I realized the loops were there, but they weren't automatically catching on, and there was no active loop button on the CDJs. And this
let me show you what you mean. So we have this loop, and I have this track playing, but before I start to play the loop, I just press this button, which means the loop is armed. You can see that by the greenish look of it.
And it's
now,
active.
It's active. Now, if I go out of the loop like this, and I place my right in front of it, and let's give this a cue, and I start playing from here, the moment we hit the loop, because it's still active, it will activate and it will start playing like this. Exactly. And this is how us Traktor users use it, because this works so good for us, because we can right now do this automatically. But there was no way we get that information into Rekordbox. Now, in a few moments, I'm going to show you that there is a way now. But first, I want to show you something else. And because we were a little bit ahead of time, or ahead of what I want to show you, let me load this track up. And then let me put it in a playlist. Like there. I can find it in a moment. Because in Traktor we have another thing that we really love, and I will show you that, because Traktor is known for the best beat grids in the industry. They are static, sure, but the beat grids are tight. Auto analysis in Traktor produces really useful beat grids. Now this track has a problem, because you can see that this is all kind of a musical intro there, and that big yellow thing is my beat marker, and I don't want to have the beat marker there, because I want the beat marker to be at the moment that the kick is starting. Like, let's say, where is that kick hidden? Oh, hold on. Like here, for instance, you see the kick there starting, so I can drop it right there, and I've got a grid. Now, the beauty of Traktor is that that grid also exists to the left of that beat marker. You can see it right here. We've got grid lines here. But we got also grid lines here. So if I go back to the start of my thing, and I can even put a cue there, little cue there. Let's say.
Or load marker.
Yeah, why not? Load cue. That is still on grid. That is still on my grid, because the grid is negative from my white point.
Yes.
Now, in the old DJ conversion utility, let me export this. That's why I wanted to do it in this order. In the old DJ conversion utility, because I have the old one right here, this is what would happen then, because Rekordbox doesn't have negative grids. We're going from Traktor, it will warn us, that's fine. That's also fine. Then we have the test playlist because that contains the track. While edit, I want to check my backup drive. All right, that was it. And let's start up Rekordbox here. Now, two things are important to watch, people. First of all, the track is not in my Rekordbox collection yet. It lives in what is known as the Rekordbox XML, and you have to load it up inside the deck. The other thing that you will notice is that the load queue is there, and it's even there as a memory queue because the DJ conversion utility converts it both to hot and memory queue because it depends on what you are doing. How you are doing it, I will show that on the CDJ later on, Chris. So make very, very clear what the distinction is between a memory queue and a hot queue. So we have that. However, our grid only starts here. I should have put a queue there, that was easier to find. And more to the right of that. You see that? There the grid starts. To the left, there is no grid. Yeah. That is because we converted and Rekordbox doesn't know negative grids. Yeah. So what I did in the new DJ conversion utility is if a beat marker is set in the middle of a track, like in this track, and you go back in time in that track, it will take the BPM from the right part and interpolate, what a word, to the start. So you get a grid to the left as well. So basically what Rekordbox or what the DJ conversion utility does is it will set two beat markers, one at the start of the track or at the first beat of the track, and one at the actual beat of the track, just to mimic a negative grid. And let me show you that as well. And then we also go into your other part, namely the load queue. Let's go here. Or let's put a loop. Hold on. I said a loop, not a queue. Let's put an 8-bar loop right there, store it there. And let's name this loop #CL. That is not short for Chris Liebing. That is short for catch loop. And I knew that I used that phrase way before we ever met, but I thought, hey, that's funny. It's also Chris Liebing, but that's just the way it is. And then let's put a queue in front of it so we can easily find it, like there. Now, like I explained before, in Traktor we are used to the fact that you can arm a loop and then can start playing the track, and the moment we enter that loop it will activate. Because I named this loop #CL, there will something funny happen when I'm going to convert this with the new DJ conversion utility. And by the way, I don't know why that is there, but let's take that away so we keep it a little bit clean all the way. Like this. So we have that. Let's export this.
I'm always going to pretend this is named after me now.
Yeah, I know. But it's not only catch loop. You can name it active loop. You can write it out. You can do what you want. And maybe I will just, because there are some tricks I'm going to do with it right now, or automatically, maybe I will just translate it to Chris Liebing. I will talk to Roland if I'm allowed to do that. All right, let's quit Traktor here, and then I have to do a little bit of juggling because I had the old DJ conversion utility. And then we go to the new one. By the way, folks, if you have a license to the DJ conversion utility and you want to play with this new version, it is in beta, it's a public beta. If you have a license to the DJ conversion utility, you can use it for free and you can download it from the message box. I will show that right away as well. So on face value, not much is going to change and not much is going to happen.
You know, I started to have a key combination on Rekordbox 5 then, that I loaded tracks into the deck. I clicked on the orange loop to make it red, loaded the next one, click, loaded the next one, click with a key combination and the mouse, bing, 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 bing. So I went through my playlist to make
the orange red.
Make the orange red, yes.
Yeah, right. All right, for those interested, if you click the envelope symbol, there you get to the message box. You can see that there is tonight a special with Chris Liebing, and there you can also find the download link. There it is, to the latest beta. You can download it from there, and just please follow the instructions. There is a tutorial there, there are instructions there. This needs a little bit more setup, so do that. But after you have set it up, this is what will happen. You have a new button here, Invoke XML to Rekordbox 6 after conversion. What will happen is it will automatically put the information that we are going to convert straight into Rekordbox 6. It is a huge time saver, but it always gives me features that were not possible before, and that is what you are going to witness right now. Let's start the conversion. And let's say we take the test playlist because nothing has changed there. And then automatically that other program is started up, XML to 6. And there's nothing you need to do. You can just walk away and just come back. And you will see that Rekordbox 6 is started already. And then have the converted tracks. There we are. And now let me load up that same track. By the way, there are some playlists created right now, because that is all done automatically, as you can see. No need to import anything anymore. We were talking about this track right here. As you can see, all of a sudden it has a beat marker at the left part instead of only. Then we go to the memory queue section right there. You see that it's already red and that it now named catch low. It's catch loop, by the way. See? And it has the color red. You can see that the memory queues have colors there too. And let me show you, let me deactivate that. Hold on, because it's activated right there. If I go to the hot queue section again and load up just in front of it and I click play, the same thing that we are used to in Traktor will happen. It will automatically arm and start playing. So no more making the orange red, Chris.
Yay.
Just name them all #CL and it will do it for you. And I'm sure you can remember that abbreviation. that wouldn't.
That you can name it differently too. Do you have certain? Does it need to be a certain name? Yes.
Yeah, it needs to be a certain name, and I can give you because with the. Do I have the installation here? I don't think.
#CL is super simple to remember for me. That's great.
Yeah, I know, but there are. It can be active loop. It can be, but CL catch loop is because, like you, the first thing I do when I get a track is make my exit point in case I miss my window of mixing out. So the first thing I do is go all the way to the end, find a segment of at least 8 and preferably 16 beats, and then make it a loop and save it. And just like we have a backup for our audio, that is my backup for my mixing. If I miss my exit point that I want to use, if I take a pee, if whatever, if somebody is offering me a drink and I make small talk, then at least the audio will go and I know that I have a point that I can perfectly mix out. Yes. So that's how I always rolled. Now there's another thing I want to show you, my friend, because this is already pretty cool, of course. But with the DJ conversion utility, because we are used in Traktor to have only those baby blue cues, like here. You see that? Those baby blue cues. And that's the only color we can have. Of course, you can set a load cue and it has a different color, etc. And this is, by the way, is coming from another artist whose name I can abuse, namely Z. Z is also a Traktor user from the old ages. And Z was playing Ultra Miami 2019, and he was faced with the problem that he wanted to sync his visuals and his show elements with his audio, and for that you really need to be on CDJs because that has excellent equipment for that. So Z got how he could go from Traktor to Rekordbox, and then he discovered that CDJ cues can have colors. And his team spent days setting colors for each type of cue because Seth liked colors in his cues. And I thought, oh no, and they reached out to me and I helped them to automate the process. And then I thought, the same as this basically is given in the automatic hot cue or the automatic active is because you reached out to me. The other thing I'm going to show you is basically given to me, the ID, by Team Z, who were just putting all those cue colors differently, and I will show you what that means. With the DJ Conversion utility comes a little utility named Cue and Loop Parameters. You see it right there, which basically is what you already set. So you can say, all right, I have an abbreviation, any abbreviation you like, you can modify it yourself, which in full text will mean that, and you can set a color for it. For instance, the CL we used should be here somewhere. Let's see. There it is, catch loop. And then you've got, for instance, hashtag B is a build up and is orange colored, and EB are empty beats. So you can just, and you can just, by the plus and the minus sign, you can put everything you like into it. Now let me show you how that works in normal. Let's say we want to have some empty beats added to the track we just had with this. And let's go back to my Traktor collection.
Can you still use this with the Rekordbox 5 then, or do you have to use Rekordbox 6 for this?
The cue and color technique works with Rekordbox 5 to an extent, only for hot cues. With Rekordbox 6, it will also work with memory cues, because memory cues cannot have a color from the XML information. The active loop thing is only possible from Rekordbox 6. You cannot do that from Rekordbox 5.
Okay.
Because I'm writing direct to the database, and the database of Rekordbox 5 is entirely different from the database of Rekordbox 6. So I basically don't have the access for that to do so. Let me get that test track up again, like there. And let's imagine that right here we've got a couple of empty beats, like there. And you want, then I can say right here, that's hashtag EB. Doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase, and you can even say something else behind it. For instance, if you have a vocal, you can say it's the vocal, start singing, whatever. Oh, we can do that too. Why not? Put a cue there, and let's name that hashtag V female chorus, like that. And as always, you have to export that to NML, because otherwise the information is not in the database. And let's quit this. By the way, you don't need to quit Traktor to do this, but it's always just, yeah, I know what is running then. Like this. Don't you love it if you write this kind of stuff and then you forget what kind of protections you built into it? Always, I keep.
When and how did you learn to write all this?
At the age of 10.
Oh wow!
I think my first. I built my first computer, which was based on the 6502 CPU. And that was strictly LEDs, which there was no screen or anything attached. It was very simple. And then I convinced my dad that we really needed a VIC-20 computer, because my dad did a lot of mail order stuff where he had to type out all addresses. And I said, if you get me a VIC-20 computer, I write a program to store those addresses. And if we have a printer, we can print them out as much as we like. And that was unheard of in those days. We are now talking maybe begin 80s and 70s. So then I just figured out how to do that. And to me, computers kind of talk. I communicate with computers very easy. So if I need something done by a computer and it's technically possible, I can create it. I can just write it. It just takes me a moment. And I can do that. It's like maybe you've got something similar with your music, that you can just think of your, by the way, I've cut it with music too. I can hear a tune, I can hear a mashup in my head, I can hear a remix in my head, and then the only thing I need to do is make it. But that is basically the boring part because I already know what it should sound like. Well, the same with this kind of stuff. I already know what I want to build. I know how it needs to be built. I just need to build it.
Yeah.
That's just the hardware. All right. If you look right here, you see CLP enabled. That means that CLP, that is that little program I showed you, that is bundled with the DJ conversion utility. That is basically where you say, all right, that abbreviation is that color, is that full text. And that needs to be there. And it will be enabled automatically if it's there, and you can disable it as well. So let's go. So Chris, I'm afraid you need to go to Rekordbox 6 to take full advantage of this.
On my computer as well. That's not the issue.
Now, in the past, 5.6.0 was the go-to because that had the XML import bug. And this is basically designed, I wrote XML to 6 basically because I was sick and tired of the XML import bug. I've thought about with Pioneer DJ for about 4 years now that bug exists. I've taught them how they can fix it. They told me that they were going to do it, and they never did it. So at the end of the day, I thought, all right, if you're not going to fix it, then I'm just going to circumvent it and write my own stuff for it. So that's the reason. All right, let's load up the track again. And there you can see right here that the empty beats is yellow.
Yes.
And that one is green, the vocal. So just based on those things. In the past, I was unable to do this with memory cues, but these days we can do it with the memory cues as well because I'm writing it straight ahead to it. So you can see it there with the memory cues as well, that they all got their colors, etc. So those were the things, Chris, why I reached out to you. I wanted to show you the possibility to make an active loop active automatically. And I wanted to make sure that you know that you can use colors with this kind of stuff. Now, for the other thing, you can really easy use, let me get us up on screen again. Let me see, where am I? There am I, that's me. And that's real life Chris. You can really easily make the CDJs hit controllers. The only thing that might be a little bit of a problem for you is that you need a hub, because those CDJs need to be USB connected to your Traktor computer. Right. So you need, for instance, everything, for me, everything is in a coffin, and in this coffin, sorry?
Actually, I have a hub. I'm using one. My camera doesn't go that far right now. Hold on. You see that? Because I have...
Yes. All right. Yeah, I see him. I
I have 2 USB slots free available.
There you go. Plug in the CD. Plug in the 3000s.
I can do it right now.
and you will feel right at home. And just put them on deck A and B.
Yeah.
And you will feel immediately at home, because again, those jog wheels on the 3000s, they are so smooth.
Yeah.
That there's nothing smoother than that. So you can really easily use that.
That's
and I'm more than happy to show you if you say, all right, show me how to do that. It's simplicity itself, but let me just, hold on, that's that. Let me put you in the little corner again. And then let's see that I can zoom to a single one, just to get a better view, or at least as max view as possible. All right, I'm going to fire up Traktor. Let me switch that.
I once looked into this already, but I didn't it yet. So
let's load up our test track like this. Now let's go to the overhead cam. There it is. All right, all you do is you press source. Hold on. The one above, control mode CDJ. and then you can choose which deck it needs to be. So let's
Wow. That's super good. Yeah.
let's Control A, and there you can see our cues are there, everything is there. You can zoom in. Because we are Traktor users, we love our little blue waveform. I still cannot use two other kind of waveforms. I really want the Traktor ones because they give me all the information that I need. And you have it right in front of you. And you can just use it any way you like. It is instant, it is very fast, and I really can recommend you to give it a try. And Pioneer DJ will hate me for that because they don't want their gear to be used as a hit controller. They want to be used standalone. But let's see that Chris gets up there too. You just need a very long USB A to B. You need an A to B cable, Chris.
I'll have one here, right here.
And then you need the USB connection at the rear of the CDJ.
Yes. Oh, it's a USB. Oh, it's the big USB cable.
It's an A to B, so the square one.
Right, the square one. I need to find that one. I don't have that here right now.
Yeah, I think your Traktor controllers or your those control boxes. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one should be it.
Really?
And the other one should be an A.
Hold on.
Let me double check on my own system.
Yeah, you have to check because I don't think. I think it's
right in the middle. At the back in the middle.
That's where the link cable is.
Oh, it's linked now. Well, no, you link them. You don't link them with UTP. You don't link them over Ethernet. Is it linked? Is it linked already to the mixer?
Yeah, I have that linked. But
to the mix. You don't need the link if you want to do this.
No, but it was already linked. But honestly, I don't know which USB cable I would need. I think.
You got it all. You need to disconnect it from the V10. It's got an A connection in the V10 at the back. You got it set up wrong. In Pioneer terms, you can link over UTP or over USB, but usually you link over Ethernet, over UTP. And the USBs you use for the hit modes. And the fact that you are on a V10 even makes things easier because the V10 can just take one USB connection and then it can link over UTP as well. So all you need are UTP, or networking cables. Are you still with me?
I'm still into Pioneer, so I'm still a little confused here.
All right. Let me explain. I always try. I'm always of the book. Give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Learn a man how to fish and he will eat the rest of his life. So yeah. I rather want you, but you can, if you follow that USB lead, there you go. There you've got the UTP connection, that is the middle one, and then there should be
about this one?
That is the UTP connection, that's the network connection, and the blue one, then the blue one to the, yes, that one is your USB connection.
And you say my USB cable, then I just still have it.
Yeah, the square one. I saw a square one, right?
This? Oh, it does. Of course it does.
Yo, no shit.
I didn't. I didn't manage to fit it in. But do I have to cut?
But Chris, that is an old DJ joke. There are 3 ways to insert the USB, and then you see a picture with a USB once, the other side around, and then finally the correct side. So everybody falls for that. It's always hard to fit them. And then the other end goes to the hub of your computer.
Yes, it does. Hold on, I'm gonna give you a different camera angle here so you can see what I'm doing.
I know this from the top of my head, but all right, just hold on. Let me give you the room.
There
There
we
you
go.
are. All right. Now press on that. You've got Traktor running. That's 351, right?
So I can go.
Hold on. Hold on, Chris. You are on Traktor 351.
Yes, I'm on the latest
All right.
one.
Yeah, perfect. You need to be on the latest one because
Yeah.
this was only recently introduced.
351.
All right. All right. Then you can press source, and then you've got the top one is the one you need to select with the encoder.
So I go into control mode.
Yes.
Control mode, because I still have the USB stick sticking in
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
control mode, and then I can choose the deck. Let's choose deck A,
All right. Load up a track.
and then load. Oh yes, See,
There you go. There you go. It really works, my friend. It really works, and it's amazing.
I'm gonna.
So and if you press the encoder, it's also a press key. It's the same as you do on your things. There you are.
Loads.
Yeah, I see. It's already there. And now you see your cues. Your everything is there, and you can play it. You can
Yes,
do whatever you want.
Here's the load, loop, play. Yeah, fantastic. I can still use my controllers, and I can.
Yes, that is what I said to you. This is just an extension of your kit. And in case your computer dies, you press source again, you go to the USB, and you keep playing.
I hit a loop. It hits there.
Yeah, I know.
I can.
And if no, you can play. You can play it with the green button. You have that big green button on the CDJ, left lower corner, left lower corner. Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Cool, huh?
I've learned something new. Again.
I hope so.
On live.
But then you are in vinyl mode on the CDJ, I hope.
Yes, I'm in vinyl mode.
All right. Then just use the jog. Just see what happens to your screen, to your Traktor screen, and how you use it. And I don't know how much you like to zoom into your tracks, but I like to zoom in way more than the default, the maximum.
I do zoom in, and let me quickly find another USB cable here. And I do this with the other CDJ as well.
All right. The man is changing his setup. I can always say that I was the guy who changed Chris his rider.
On live TV here. And
on a live stream.
Luckily, my hub has exactly those 4.
Yep, now you're done.
I never knew why I got a hub with 4 hubs, with 4 extensions. Now I know why. So now I go into this, and I use the track C, because it's on my left hand.
All right, yeah, that's how you want to say it. Yeah, assign C to it.
Do it like this a little bit more.
We can see it. We could see it.
We could see it. I wanted to make it a bit bigger.
We could see it.
So like this, maybe. So, and I can load a track here. Bam, track is loading. I can play it.
All right. Now, if you turn the encoder again, then you can zoom in the waveform, and I usually zoom it in all the way.
Yeah, all the way.
Yep. There you can see your. There you got your shit.
Yeah.
No more Mr. Laptop face. He can do it all from his CDJs.
This is awesome. This is amazing, and it's just 2 more USB cables that I'm carrying with me.
I know.
So
and by the way, you can do this with Nexus 2's too. Works exactly the same.
Huh. That is very, very interesting. That is very cool. Obviously, if I hit sync on my individual decks and Traktor, I cannot use the pitch fader. If I hit sync, yeah, I can just pitch. I know. Absolutely, I can. I don't need to hit sync anymore. I can mix stuff in.
I know. That's what I tried to tell you, my friend. This is so good.
Wow. Deactivate loop. Quick question now then.
You can activate a loop. Activate a loop, please. Just a random loop. You just activate the loop.
Yeah.
And now press the control screen. Just press the touch screen. The touch screen, yep, there. There it should give you the option to play with the loop, to set it differently, to do other stuff. You see it? You can make it 4, 8, 16.
Yeah, I'll do this here, a quarter loop. Awesome.
There is so much shit you can do with this. You can key basically everything in Traktor you can control like this.
Wow.
So that's why I was amazed. All right, why didn't you do that? Because this is so cool.
I'm doing it now.
I got that. All right, I promised you to teach you the difference between memory and hot cues, because this is important if you want to use those fuckers standalone. So let me quit my. And by the way, this is also important, Chris, because you can switch between Traktor control mode and USBs seamlessly on those CDJs. So you can just switch. If you got another artist who needs to follow you up on stage, you can say, all right, give me your CDJ USB, plug it in already, and load this first track while you are still working with it. That's the beauty of this. You are very flexible.
2 questions I have. One you
Sure.
already answered. I can easily switch the source. I can go back to my USB stick.
Yep, you just do it right now. You are connected to Traktor. You can go.
I go to my USB stick, and I can easily browse here in my playlists, which I have on my USB stick, obviously.
Yep.
Easy, can load some.
But the same if that is another artist that is following you up on the stage you are playing at. You just say, all right, plug your USB in, and I will be leaving soon with my Allen Heat controllers, etc. And you can play your set.
Okay, second question would be,
Sure.
If my Traktor would crash now. Okay, I go back to what I'm playing here. I'm going back to what I'm playing here. So I'm still playing the track of Traktor. Now let's say.
Just unplug it. Unplug the USB. That's the best crash you can get.
I unplug the USB, the hub or the sound card. Does it actually?
No.
It doesn't go through the sound card anymore, right?
No, you use the sound. You can do 2 things. Now we are going to get really complicated if you want to know this.
Complicated, I see that.
But you can make a choice in Traktor. If I'm in, let me show that on my screen. Then I can show you easy. And then we are going to crash your Traktor. But you can do basically 2 things. If you go to preferences, and you saw me doing this already a little bit, and you go to audio setup, then I can say what kind of audio setup I want to use. Obviously, it is set to my DJM 900 right here. You see, right there.
Of course,
but you can also choose the 3000s.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
And then you use the audio card on the 3000s.
Yes.
Please don't do that, because that makes a hell of a mess. And right now your output routing is also set correctly. You can see that right here, that my outputs are all linked to the 900. You've got a similar thing going on with the V10 there. But if you are going to set the audio setup to your CDJ 3000, all of a sudden, your output routing is just going to be the left and right of that particular CDJ and nothing else.
Yes, it has only 2 outputs, the CDJ.
Yep.
But it gives you the option, just in case your sound card is breaking on the V10 or something, you can play on the CDJ.
Then you can play, but if your sound card is failing on the V10 is a digital mixer, then it means you have got more issues, so you cannot get any audio in at all. And by the way, I don't know how you are wired up, but I prefer to be wired up all digital. So I use the digital output on my 3000s to the digital input of the channel of the 900. So I keep my signal digital as long as possible.
Absolutely, I had to explain this to a lot of stage sound people already. Like when I came there, they had it plugged in analog, which doesn't make any sense to me. It's less cables and it's purely digital. Why would you put analog out of the CDJs? when you have-
Everything, the only thing that's analog is the DVS kit behind me. That goes analog into the 900. The rest all digital. I go from the Allen and Heath DB4 digitally in the 900. I go from the X1800, which is a Denon mixer. Forget about it because it's trash. But digitally into my 900 just because I want to use the digital analog converters in that particular mixer because it sounds great. But I don't use any analog outputs on my CDJs or my Denon gear ever. Why would I? I just stay digital as long as possible.
Okay, but what happens now if I quit Traktor? Like the CDJ.
No, don't quit it because then it will close it. You want to pull the plug. You want to be brave. You want to have it playing, and then pull the USB out of the hub.
I did. Oh. Pull the USB hub. No,
not the hub. They take it all. Just the cable, the USB cable to the player.
Yeah, to the players. All right, hold on. I just pulled the USB cable.
That's even worse. So it really shouldn't matter that much.
Yeah. I pull the this one.
Have a track playing.
Okay, then yeah, I have a track playing. Then record.
Look what happens to your Traktor.
Well, Traktor is still playing.
Yep. So there is no problem there. However, if this was a worst case situation, you can now go on the CDJ to your USB and start playing with it.
Yes, but my question would be, let's say Traktor is crashing.
Yeah, but what you did is actually the simulation of a crash. If you quit Traktor, that is a clean quit. Then it will terminate all processes running, including closing out the CDJ. Pulling the plug is the same as having Traktor crash. Or you can do a force quit on Traktor, but don't do that if you don't have any backups, because that can sometimes give you some other trouble. So I really don't want you to do that as an experiment.
No,
but trust me, pulling the USB plug is as worse as it can get, and then you can still go from on the CDJ 3000 to the USB and load your track and just continue to play as you always would. So basically, there's not.
you know, if you playing from a USB stick on the CDJ 3000, I as far as I got told, I don't know this. When you pulled a USB stick, you had an emergency loop running, right? On old CDJs. On the
Not anymore. The 3000 has an emergency track.
It buffers the whole track.
Yeah, because the CDJ, but only the 3000, nothing else does that.
Only the 3000 buffers the whole track, which is awesome. So now, wouldn't it be absolutely awesome if Traktor crashes? I use the CDJ as a controller for Traktor. Yeah. Now imagine Traktor crashes. Wouldn't it be great if the CDJ 3000 also would buffer this track?
No, because it's not using it. It's a dumb controller. It are just buttons and a jog wheel and a screen. It's not using the audio card, so there's nothing to buffer. It's just a dumb controller.
So you don't, in that way, that's the point where I wanted to get to. Playing like this would not give you an exit strategy in that case.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Listen, you've got Traktor assigned to a particular channel on the V10. So you've got 4 channels in use on the V10 straight from Traktor. That means you've got other channels open to connect the CDJ 3000 digitally to. So let's say you've got 2 channels where you have the CDJ on its own too. Usually you play with the Traktor channels, the Traktor assigned channels, but if you don't want it anymore, then you can easily switch back to the other channels which are coming straight from the CDJ if you play USB. So you separate the whole process. If Traktor crashes, then the 4 channels from Traktor crash with it, and you go back to the 2 channels that the 2 CDJs are connected to.
That is what I understand, but you obviously have a little time gap because in that moment you would have to.
Yeah, it's not seamless. It is like, oh, holy shit, something goes wrong. All right, I have to push buttons and do something because otherwise it will not fly.
Yeah, see,
but
on my system so far, when I play with the USB sticks, with my playlists, I constantly play something off the CDJs. So even if the Traktor crashes, the crowd might not even notice that my Traktor crashed, because I always have a track running mixed
That's
in.
correct. That's correct. That's correct. So that means you need 4 CDJ 3000s, 2 as a controller and 2 as an exit strategy. But maybe, Chris, I can lure you into looking at Algorithms DJ. It's a German company, so it should at least, because if you need an exit strategy and you want one, then Algorithms DJ is a great one, because it's such a great software. It's such an undervalued great software. And you can have that running, you can use that in your mix too. So, but
What is
let's, sorry?
What does this software do?
Is DJ, you never saw Algorithms DJ? Let me show you. This, my friend, is Algorithms DJ. If it will load up. It's taking its time.
So you play it from your phone?
You play it from your phone, but
Okay.
at a level of control and a level of precision you cannot imagine. This is
Wow.
so great.
Okay.
And it works with CDJ 3000s. You can control this software on my phone with CDJ 3000s in hit mode. You can even play to a V10 with CDJ 3000s in hit mode.
Okay.
If you use this on an iPad, then you don't really need a controller, because it's all touch-based, so you can do it by touch. And because this mimics a complete SL12 system, and there is also a macOS version for it. Let me show you that, because
Wow. There's enough exit strategies now. In your
this is, like I said, Algorithms DJ is the reason why I developed my tools. To me, it's why I developed the DJ conversion utility. I was on Traktor, I was like you, I want to have an exit strategy. What kind of exit strategy can I have? All right, Algorithms DJ is useful. It is very good software to do just what I need it to do, and it can do so much more. But just an A/B mixing DJ software, it fills the bill. So I thought, all right, I want that to be my exit strategy, I want that to be my backup, but I don't want to put my cue points and loops and everything again. So that's why I wrote my software. I wanted to go from Traktor to Algorithms DJ. And then came Rekordbox along. And then I talked to the guys from Pioneer, basically the CEO of Pioneer DJ, by accident. Again, luck is a... Let me tell you that story. That's a great story, because we got all the time in the world. So I had written the DJ conversion utility, which was called DJ conversion, DJAY, like Algorithms DJ. That was its first name, its original name. And it was Amsterdam Dance Event 2016. And I just had guerrilla style put a banner in front of a place where people were eating, that I had software that you can convert. And there were some Japanese people on the table opposite to me eating something, and they were pointing to that banner, because that banner had a very big Rekordbox logo on it. So I saw them pointing, so I walked up to them, said to them, "Are you guys DJs? You seem to be interested in my banner." Yeah. So, all right, feel free to join my table if you are true, and I'm happy to show it to you. Yeah. And to my amazing, the same as that you sent me that email with the dates, those guys showed up on my table, and I sat down there with them. And we exchanged business cards. And I look at the business card, CEO of Pioneer DJ Japan. Holy shit, I didn't expect that. So I showed him what my software could do, and he was really amazed, because there was not much on the market that could do that.
Right.
And he asked me, can you do that for Serato too? Because Serato was at that time the biggest competitor for Rekordbox. I said, sure, I can do it for Serato. I don't need it, but if it makes you happy, I make that for Serato. Why not? And that is why the DJ conversion utility evolved. It was, like you said, pure luck that I was sitting, a guerrilla still demonstrating something at the table, and that the person opposite to me was just the right person at the right time, having the right state of mind and the time to sit down with me.
Yeah.
Sheer luck, nothing else.
Amazing.
Yeah, but that, all right, this is what it looks like on Mac OS. that's always a thing with the working DJs. You guys don't have the time to find out what technology is available anymore, and that's sometimes that's a shame because this is such a great stuff.
It is absolutely the same. I'm so behind sometimes on versions and on latest technologies and stuff like this. That's yeah. But
And you can
it only has 24 hours, right?
Sorry?
The day only has 24 hours.
Yeah. That's always that's my problem as well. So you can just put coupons there. You can do anything. What is unique about this software, Chris, and why you might want to give it a look, is that it can separate a cappellas from normal audio tracks in real time. So
Wow.
you can throw a track in it.
So it has this isotope rebalance technology.
It's actually the technology that was created by Deezer, which is a public domain, and it can separate a cappellas real time from anything else. Let's see, because I did a test with that a moment ago, but I don't really want to put the audio on. Otherwise, in 3 weeks ago, I did a test of this versus some dedicated software that can separate a cappellas from, and I did the test with Rammstein. So with Do from Rammstein, because if one track is really hard to separate the vocals from the bass and everything else that is going on, then it's Do from Rammstein, and it was capable to separate the audio from it perfectly well, and it sounded really good. So I really ask you to have a look, or I show you this in private, then we can dive a little bit deeper in it, because this is real great stuff. But if you are looking for an exit strategy, I really would recommend to you have a look at Algorithms DJ, because it can do such great things.
I mean, I can still have one CDJ run on a USB stick.
My advice, let's face it, we both know how this works. If you are in the middle of your set and something goes wrong, then you have to live it with 3 seconds of silence, because you need to realize something is going on. You have to act on it. So just take it for granted. And like you said, especially the Traktor sets.
Luckily, this rarely happens, to be honest.
Right. So there is a certain amount of that. There's always a balance between how many precautions do I need to take for what risk, and how hard, what will that put on top of what I usually would do otherwise. And I think that the amount of things you need with 4 CDJs and having a USB in and having it run, that doesn't really weigh up to the facility, to the ease of use, if you don't want to do that and just have a backup ready, because no doubt you need to have a backup. That's for sure. But if things go wrong, let them go wrong, but just have 3 seconds of recovery time to make sure that you can switch everything.
I actually like the fact to play, let's say, that double hybrid set with just playing a complete separate channels of the CDJs and mix it with my Traktor stuff. I mean, yeah. I will definitely play around with this now here. This is awesome. Because you can use the CDJs, that's perfect, even more. But I've been basically going back and forth. My last sets have been more even sometimes playing from the CDJs, going back to Traktor. The beauty with Traktor and the Maschine is that I am pretty good by now to push and pull the tempo of Traktor.
All right.
Yeah, so I can basically...
That's a very important thing. But
yeah.
I promised you to show you the difference between hot cues and memory cues on a CDJ standalone, because that is how you are using them now anyway. So let's go into the... We are going on almost 4 hours now or something? 3 hours? It must be a record somewhere. Let's see. There's my screen. There are we again. Let me put a CDJ USB in. Let's see if there is stuff on it. Already named CDJ. Let me just empty it. And then fire up my record box and just put those test tracks on it so you can clearly distinguish between what's going on. There we are. There's the test track and that. There it is. Of course, you can use CDJs as a hit mode on Rekordbox as well, but
Sure.
this is more fun. Let me go to the overhead cam. I hope this is a little bit readable because that's the CDJ. There's the track. All right. Right here we've got hot cues.
Right.
My track is paused. It's not playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The moment I press a hot cue, the track starts playing. That is different than what you saw in Rekordbox, because then, like Traktor, it will play for as long as you press it,
Right.
unless you press the big green play button, and otherwise you are cooked. Let me make this a little bit.
No, that kind of worked.
Yeah, but I didn't see the green button there. But all right. So if I press, for instance, this, then it starts playing, and you can see there that the loop is automatically activated right now. So that is working as it's supposed to work.
Yes.
Now for the memory cues are a starting cue, and you, with those two buttons, you can jump. Oh, hold on, I'm still in the loop length. Let me exit the loop. That. And now you see me jump through the track. So I jump to the different memory cues with those buttons. These are the hot cues. Start the track immediately. These are the memory cues. Now, if you have a memory cue in front of you, then the cue button, the orange cue button, will act as a hot cue button in Traktor, which means if I press it, it starts to play. If I let it go, it stops playing and goes back to the place you are. So the combination of a loaded memory cue and this one makes it perform as a hot cue in Traktor. And I know this is confusing as shit, but that is also the reason why you see most DJs usually tap this button on the beat, because you can use it as a start, and then you can press the green button below it and it will continue to play. So it is an easier way to time it like that.
Yeah,
so,
Pat loves to do this.
Yeah, I bet he does. Because let's face it, Carl is used to Traktor cues as well. So he wants to have this, stay in the groove, stay in the beat, and then the moment he wants to let it go, he just plays it like this. If he doesn't like it, let it go and try it again before you even blend it into the mix. And then you press the green one and you let it run. So that is the big difference between memory loops and hot cues. Hot cues on CDJs always make the track play, but it always goes back to it as well. So if I play the yellow one and I play it again, it goes back, but it keeps playing. I cannot stop it. It keeps playing.
Somebody too drunk, too funk, too old school for school just says if you press the cue button for 4 beats, it keeps going. Is that true?
Nope.
If you keep it pressed for four bars, let's put it that way. 1,
4 bars.
2, 4. Let's
we are this aim 2 bar, 3 bar, 4 bar. No. Let me try it again. 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, 4 bar, 5th bar.
He even says 4 beats, but apparently that's not working. See, I'm still so new to this Pioneer technology here that I'm still learning.
Oh, the only way to make this working is pressing the green button below. Then it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the only way. I remember my first times. The first time that I had, I keep falling for that, don't I? The first time I encountered the CDJ coming from Traktor, it scared the living shit out of me, because I thought those tracks or those cues work the same as in Traktor, and I love my cues. I cue everything up. I put loops everybody. Yeah, there is no too drunk, too funk, too old school. There is no settings for the release function on cue. CDJs are very limited in what you can do, but I can imagine that in previous versions it was possible. I still begging Pioneer to make it possible that the hot cue will act, they call that gated. Right now it's non-gated, which means you press it, it plays the track and it keeps playing. If it's gated, it means it plays as long as you press the cue button, and only if you press the green play button with it, it will continue to play. But I can imagine that how scared I was the first time I played on CDJs unprepared. Oh, it's a VDJ function. Yeah, that's something different, my friend. VDJ, it's a VDJ function. It's not a CDJ standalone function. But anyway, this is what you can do with that. I think, Chris, after 3.5 hours, we better call it a day. I really enjoyed this, and I really thank you for your time that you wanted to share all this information, all this knowledge with us. And I sure hope that maybe we can do this again later on.
Absolutely. This yells out for part 2. Yeah. I thank you because I've learned so much right now. Again, I'm like, I spent the next 3 hours here. I still have to master some tracks. My ears are still fine, but I'm going to sit here and play around with this now. So. All right,
because after that, I really want to show you what we can do with mixed in key and Traktor and Rekordbox, because that's a different ballpark. But it basically shows you how I prepare my tracks.
Right.
And I always say I don't have the golden rule of workflow, and I don't have the. But I explain to people how my workflow works, and then they can just pick and choose from that. And I want to talk about your workflow as well and how you set up your collection. But I think after 3.5 hours, maybe it's wise to just call it a day for now and just schedule a part 2. And I really hope to join you at the Amsterdam Dance event to fist bump and have that alcohol-free beer. For sure.
Absolutely. Whoever is going to be at the Amsterdam Dance event, you can see Peter somewhere running around, fist bumping.
I'm literally biking around the city because I always do this on bike because us Dutchies do everything. And I still got the best cup coasters. They are for your cup. So everybody who sees me, just yell me out, and I'm happy to share a cup coaster with you guys because that's the thing I do. All right, Chris. Thank you very much for this. Usually, people on Twitch, we raid into another Twitch DJ, but to be honest, I'm not really in the mood to see who is on Twitch right now and to sort something out. So I call it a day for that. Thank you all for watching this, and thank you all for being with us. If you like what I'm doing, then please give this video the thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you like what Chris is doing, then please follow Chris on his socials. And I think it's safe to say that Chris and I will be back for a part 2 together and just have fun with you. Thank you for watching, everybody.